watch for Meade, Breckenridge, and Grayson County. Another thing I'd be willing to bet we'll be extending this later on today. I would say we're going to be covering up almost that entire area, most likely with a tornado watch, and then watching for tornado warnings to form. I want to show you where I'm expecting the likelihood for severe weather and where I think most of these warnings will be quite extreme, with some of the winds up around 70, 75 miles per hour and tornado warnings. So this is where the ingredients are a little bit higher in this zone. You can see where I have it highlighted with that extreme nature. We'll get into future radar. I know you want to see the timing and when this line moves through. Also, the one threat that we have after the severe weather later on today, because something nasty lingers even into the evening.
All right, thank you, Jude. Let's take a look as we're getting out. And we've had, of course, the rain coming down. It's made travel this morning a nightmare heading out. And we still have a couple of spots where we have some delay. This is coming around the Shawnee eastbound between Crumbs Lane and Dixie Highway. And you can see police are still blocking 2 lanes of traffic. We're right here in the curve there. There's Crumbs Lane, Dixie Highway. So that's one spot you need to watch out here in the next couple of minutes. And we're still moving quite Kennedy Bridge. From the Oxmoor Auto Group Traffic Center, I'm Mike Marshall with WDRB Traffic.
Severe storms will roar through our area today. What Jude was talking about, we are talking high wind and possible tornadoes.
WDRB's Amanda Roberts has been out on Kentuckiana's roads this morning, and she joins us now live to give us a look at current conditions. Amanda?
Hey, good morning, guys. We're here on Melwood Avenue in the Clifton area. Most of the roadways have been pretty clear. However, this is probably the first thing we have seen this morning where it looks like some significant ponding, at least in the Louisville metro area. This is a good example of why you need to drive carefully, why you need to drive cautiously, and why you need to have your eyes out for any of these road impediments like water over the roadway, because they can create a really dangerous situation, from hydroplaning to your car getting stuck and you being stranded and requiring the help from emergency this morning. And they are going to be busy all day, you can imagine, with all of this weather that we are going to be seeing, from all of this rain to high winds to damaging winds, potentially even tornadoes as well, that you heard Jude talking about and warning about. So this is a really good example of why you just need to try and stay inside today if you can, and off of the roadways. If you are going to be out, you need to drive carefully and slowly. Also be sure to have your tornado plan, which we have reiterated throughout the morning. So we'll be sure to drive the roads and give you the latest update when we get them. For now, reporting live from the Drive Cam, Amanda Roberts, WDRB News. Back to you.
Amanda, thank you. Because of JCPS closing schools today for weather, games for the boys regional basketball tournament have been rescheduled. Today's games, all of them are postponed until Sunday afternoon. So now on Sunday, Manual will play Trinity at 2:30 p.m. and Mail will play Ballard at 4 p.m. Saturday's schedule will remain the same. Then the boys' 6th region final will move to Monday at 7 p.m. and the 7th region final will move to Tuesday at 7.
Storms expected. Storms coming at us into the afternoon right now. Heavy rain ongoing. It's made it up to about the Ohio River and I-64, the rain versus the clearing line. Southern Kentucky, rain's not going to be a factor until later on, but southern Indiana, with temps in the 40s, steady, moderate to heavy rain. Flash flood warning is the biggest concern as we look at the near term. Already 3 to 4 inches just to our west. We're going to end up with more than 3 inches of rain widespread across most of Hoosier land. Metro Louisville will continue with a flash flood warning. This runs until a little after 11 o'clock this morning. That could change depending on how much more rain we add to it. If it lets up early enough, we might be able to allow that to expire. Bottom line, this is the zone with the greatest flood threat through midday. Tornado watch includes Meade, Breckenridge, and Grayson County. This is through 2 p.m. But what's going to happen is these storms develop and approach. We're going to draw a tornado watch box on and cover up most of the viewing area. It's just going to happen a little bit later on. We still have some time before the storms arrive. We still have some time before the worst of the wind picks up. Now, this is in regard to non-thunderstorm wind, whether it's a wind advisory or a high wind warning. Both of these are really bad. And the fact that we've had so much rain, the ground is saturated, makes it easier to knock down trees. The fact that we've had so much wind over the last few months, I mean, trees and limbs are hanging on by a thread. Today could be, just that final push to bring down even more. we're looking at such a strong low pressure that non-thunderstorm winds close to 60, maybe as high as 70 miles per hour. That is such a freak. It is so rare for this to happen. Likely between noon and 4 would be the arrival of this line of severe thunderstorms when we start to watch for warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. We have the likelihood for straight line winds close to hurricane force, and we have the likelihood for multiple tornado warnings to happen, and most likely some tornado touchdowns as we stay in the spin zone. Anywhere from southern Indiana, feeding into that low pressure all the way down through the Tennessee Valley, there is a lot of spin to tap into. It's not going to be with us that long, but it correlates right along this forming line. At midday, basically, this is going to be a line of thunderstorms that will have warnings up and down it from Kentuckiana all the way through Mississippi and Alabama, moving to the east-northeast at around 75 miles per hour. Now we're at 2 o'clock. Severe thunderstorms potentially from southern Indiana, right here, all over, up and down this line. There's going to be so many warnings issued today. When it moves into your neighborhood, the worst of it's only going to be for about 10 or 15 minutes. They're moving so quickly. So once that lets up, we'll see the strong winds continue, but non-severe thunderstorm and tornadic winds into the evening. It's still gusty tonight with winds around 50 miles per hour.
All righty, thank you, Jude. Let's take a look. We still have just a small backup here out on the Shawnee Expressway. You can see there's Crumbs Lane and Dixie Highway, and right in that curve, we've had police working on this crash, and they're still blocking the 2 lanes there. So 1 lane open as we're coming around, so we're seeing that slower traffic there because of that. And then look how well we're moving here. There's 64 coming through downtown, east and west, no delay, and 65 moving very well between Clarksville and Jeffersonville. Hey, buckle up and drive safely. From the Oxmoor Auto Group Traffic Center, I'm Mike Marshall with WDRB Traffic.
Thank you, Mike. Kentuckians are not too big on the gym, according to a new study. Just over 30% of the people surveyed say they just don't work out, the way our state compares to others.
And today we will see possible flooding and possible tornadoes. Prepare now. We'll tell you some of the items you should have on standby.
The news at 11:30 starts right now. Good morning to you. I'm Chris Suter, joined by Hannah Strong first thing, and you can see why. There's a lot of activity on the radar. Some of the area under a tornado watch, Hannah.
And we've got flood alerts spread across most of southern Indiana right now in communities near the river. So let's go ahead and dive right into what we're seeing on the radar. It's looped here over just about the last hour. You can see how quickly this rain is moving. Zooming into a couple of spots, still good and heavy rain through southern Indiana. We have flooding ongoing in most of these communities now, and you can see the heaviest stretching from Bedford towards Seymour, down the interstate towards Scottsburg. Some good showers there as well. Folks, keep in mind, we're talking about ponding on the road. Don't drive through a flooded roadway. If you can't see the road underneath, it's not safe. That's the kind of stuff we're dealing with in southern Indiana this morning. Another batch of rain now moving into Kentucky. This is not the main line of storms. This is kind of a little appetizer, if you will, of what's coming in next. But some good rain from Tell City down toward Litchfield. And as we zoom out, you're going to see that line of storms now developing through Tennessee, and a secondary line starting to set up just now, moving into far western Kentucky. Here's my concern. I'm going to draw a little arrow for you here so you can see. We're getting some clearing in the clouds, really just breaks in the clouds through part of our area, our southern communities, really south of E-Town, Campbellsville, Columbia, seeing some of that. That's going to help do something we call destabilize the atmosphere. Sunshine, warm air, humidity on a day like this only serves as fuel for storms that are already going to be strong. And you can clearly see where this warm front is setting up. Warmer, more humid air to the south. It's still pretty chilly thanks to all the rain that we've seen so far this morning in Indiana. Temperatures in the 40s there, but we're pushing near 70 degrees right now in Munfordville. Bowling Green has already hit 70. That's where I'm concerned about strong thunderstorms going into the afternoon. And it's not just me. The Storm Prediction Center has expanded their enhanced risk of severe storms a little bit farther north and into far eastern Kentucky as well. We're still looking at the same threat. Strong damaging wind, the threat of tornadoes, some hail as well. So when I see you for the full forecast, we're going through it hour by hour, so you know when the strongest storms are likely in your neighborhood.
And Hannah, as you know, in just the last hour, Kentucky's governor issued a state of emergency ahead of today's severe weather. WDRB's Amanda Roberts explains how the state is preparing. Amanda.
Well, the state is going to have to respond to this emergency weather that we're expecting later today. You know, the rain we're seeing has slackened off from earlier this morning, but it's no reason to get complacent. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says there is already several emergency response factors in place from Kentucky State Police, transportation officials, and more. He says this is the second highest level of emergency response before requiring federal assistance. Now, this announcement came as part of the governor's severe weather briefing this morning. The governor's state of emergency allows Kentucky to position assets across the state if needed, like the National Guard. Beshear says that there are 400 National Guardsmen and women now ready to respond to the high winds, rain, and the potential for tornadoes that we are expecting. Beshear also praised school districts for canceling school as there is a big threat for when schools let out this afternoon. He urged businesses to keep their workers' safety in mind, hoping Kentuckians will be off the road and ready to shelter in their safe place by noon today.
Our advice is you need to get off the roads, right? Either, if you're a non-essential employee in your business, you really need to get home before the timeline that's here. All right. If you're in Louisville or Lexington, I think you need to be home by noon to make sure that you're not out on the roads.
Now, state buildings will also close to non-essential employees at 11 in order to give people time to get home. Beshear and emergency officials, they urge that this is the time to have your plan in place, to know your safe place, and have needed supplies ready, like food, water, flashlights, and extra power supplies as well. Reporting live from the Weather Garden, I'm Amanda Roberts for WDRB News.
All right.
WDRB Weather is sponsored by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance.
Let's start the forecast with the active alerts in our area. The major ones are scrolling at the bottom of your screen right now. We start with a look at flooding, which has been the big story this morning. The bright red and the dark green should grab your attention first. Those are warnings. Anytime we say warning, that means you're going to need to change the actions you were planning to take. Don't drive through a flooded road, for example. The mint and lighter green here, flood watch and flood advisory, because we've seen so much rain this morning, especially in southern Indiana. You notice that rain shield, the batch of rain, the most organized part, is lifting north out of our communities. That is making way, though, for the storms that we're expecting to see this afternoon. In the big picture, that low pressure center position nearby. Cold front, not our issue right now. The warm front is what's positioned in our communities, making this essentially two different forecasts. So the other alert you're seeing scroll at the bottom of your screen right now is the tornado watch in the yellow shading here. Tornado watch until 2 p.m. for Breckenridge, Meade and Grayson counties. We are expecting the Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center to expand this farther east in the next couple of hours. When they do, we'll certainly let you know. With that warm front position right through our area, though, you're either seeing rain and flooding, or your threat of severe storms this afternoon is getting higher. It's not both. It's one or the other right now. In southern Indiana, you can see temperatures are in the 40s. Once you get into Kentucky, they're in the 60s and pushing 70. That's where I'm concerned about stronger thunderstorms. Munfordville's at 69, Litchfield at 64, 70 degrees right now in Bowling Green. All of that warm air feeding into our southern communities. That's where the threat of strong storms is going to be the highest this afternoon. The threat of tornadoes as well. Let's just call it what it is. Dew points are also climbing in that exact same region. So not only is the air warmer there, it's more humid. We need both of those things to fuel severe weather, strong storms and that tornado potential. So we're talking about communities south of the Ohio River, and the farther south you go, the more power there is right now. So the storm threat ramps up in the next couple of hours. We're watching those storms build right now in western Kentucky and even just outside of the state. They're going to move very fast once they get here. You're going to see storm speeds, storm motion, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, just as strong as the gusts. These will race across the state. So strong storms cropping up now will be with us for the next few hours. Noon to about 5 p.m., the best window for those in our communities. Noon to 4 even, we can whittle that down a little bit. We will dry out pretty quickly tonight, but before then, we are going to see strong thunderstorms. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has just made this orange bubble larger. Is this going to be the worst severe weather day in our community? No. It's not. This is not the highest threat we have ever experienced, not even in the last couple of years. Is this a day where you should pay attention to the weather? Yes, and so I'm very glad you're doing that today. Damaging wind has always been our main concern. Tornadoes are on the table, and they get a lot of attention, as they should. Hail is also a possibility. But with the wind threat, remember, we have a high wind warning. These used to be unusual. This year, they don't seem to be. But a high wind warning is in effect for essentially half of our area in the dark brown here, with the light tan being a wind advisory. So let's go through this hour by hour. Wind is my main concern. That's going to be something most of our communities deal with. Tornadoes, again, very destructive, and so they get a lot of attention as well. But as that warm front lifts north across our area, it opens more of you up to that warmer, more humid air where we see these thunderstorms. This is now 2 p.m., so between 1 and 2, we see the storms moving from our far western communities to really that I-65 corridor. Gusts here up to 70, 75 miles an hour inside of thunderstorms. We're seeing that happen right now in western Kentucky. We're going to see a couple of spinners here. The storms can all rotate today. Whether they produce a tornado or not remains to be seen. Those will continue to race to the east by about 3 or 4, clearing out of our area. It's a short window for the strongest storms. It is a short window. But while they're here, 10, 15 minutes over your house, they're going to be pretty destructive. They're going to be pretty loud is maybe a better way to say that. The next 3 days, we're drying out. Your temperature sort of stabilized. We're going to see more showers Monday, but we will be back to talk more about today's storm threat in the 7-day forecast.
Now on WDRB News.
The heavy rain came through this morning. Now we're turning our attention to these stronger thunderstorms and the strong, damaging wind. We'll go through the forecast hour by hour so you know what to expect.
We'll also tell you how Kentuckiana is preparing for the weather and the new critical resource during an emergency that will be able to withstand a natural disaster in southern Indiana. First at noon, the weather. It is our top story, the big story of the day. You can see the radar is lit up here, and our meteorologists are going to be on standby throughout the day because this could be a doozy, Hannah.
We're expecting some strong storms. Jude is just off screen here. He's sticking around. Mark's going to be in shortly. We want to make sure you know what to expect through the afternoon and you feel as prepared as you can when the weather gets active. So 2 updates for you since I last saw you. There is a tornado warning not inside of our communities. It's in southern Kentucky, headed toward Allensville, eventually the Lewisburg area, on track to pass just south of Bowling Green. So we're keeping an eye on that particular storm. As you look a little bit farther to the west, on the other side of Paducah, a weather station there measured a gust in this second line, measured, not estimated, 72 miles an hour. This is why we're concerned, folks. 72 miles an hour is strong enough to do some damage. Obviously, when we're talking about tornadoes, that is as well. Those storms are not quite here yet, though, so we're tracking still some good downpours between Hodgenville and Hardinsburg, Lighter rain down toward Litchfield as we zoom into southern Indiana, where we've been dealing with most of the flooding today. You can see just kind of a mixture. The green here is a light rain. Once you see the yellows and the oranges, it's getting a little bit heavier. This is what you've been seeing all morning, but there's no lightning right now in Indiana. As we zoom into Louisville, the west end, starting to see some of that heavier rain. Shively, PRP picking up on that. In the east end, Middletown, St. Matthews, it's still a little bit lighter. This is not the main show, but this, you can see here, the view in Bardstown, is why I'm concerned about those second and third batches of storms that we just looked at on the radar. Bardstown showing us breaks in the clouds. It's not raining there right now. Any heat that we can generate from the sun, from just temperatures rising, that's going to generate what we call instability. Basically, that's storm energy. So it's 64 degrees in Bardstown with a dew point of 61. We're not maxing out the scale there in terms of severe weather ingredients, but that's enough to get some strong storms. The view is completely different, though, in Seymour, where rain is still falling. It is much cooler as you look farther north, only 42 degrees there. So this is going to be a very different forecast for you depending where you live. Not everyone is going to see that same tornado threat this afternoon. I want to make sure we're really clear about that. The strong wind threat, though, does cover most of our area, and the storms are ramping up now. So between now and 4 p.m., best chance for those strongest storms that we're expecting today. We'll walk through the advanced track, the future radar, hour by hour in about 10 minutes so you can make your plans through the afternoon.
Okay, Hannah, and in the meantime, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says Kentuckians should be off the road right now. This after the governor issued a state of emergency ahead of incoming severe weather. This allows the state to put assets in place across Kentucky as needed. That includes about 400 National Guards men and women ready to respond. The governor says he is concerned.
I'm worried about any weather event at this point. With everything we have lived through, these warnings are real that we're getting. I think every meteorologist is talking about the models and how concerning they could be. All right, this is something that could be a major weather event, and so we're preparing for it.
The state also activated the price gouging statute to make sure businesses aren't taking advantage of people after the storms. UK and EKU canceled in-person classes and activities on campus happening after noon today. Anytime intense weather blows in, power can become a problem. LG&E is on standby. Liz Pratt is a spokeswoman for LG&E and KU. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
I would imagine that you have an army of people ready to go. What kind of preparations are you taking?
Preparation is key, and that's the word. We continue to monitor this system, preparing for it as it moves through the state here. In addition, that includes having our crews and our business partners on alert, mobilizing resources. What's really important is we have operation centers across our service territories here in Kentucky. And that's an advantage because as a system moves through, if we experience impacts, we can mobilize and move those crews and resources around to support the impacted areas.
The potential is certainly there, as our meteorologists have been talking about today. So how long should customers be prepared to be without power?
What we always encourage, preparedness is key. So now is a great time to download our mobile app. That's a great way that you can report and track power outages. We also offer lots of great information and important safety tips on our website. The rule of thumb, based upon ready.gov is prepare, for your house and your household members, prepare, the materials you might need for a couple of days. And really what that is again, preparedness. So we encourage customers to, be aware of their surroundings. Safety is key. We want to make sure that our customers, the public, and our crews and business partners are safe in the event we do experience power outages.
Liz, people could come across down power lines too, obviously, in the hours ahead. So what should you do if that does happen to you?
Always consider, if you see a down wire, consider that it could be an energized wire. And what that means is stay away. Report it to us immediately by calling us at 502-589-1444. But we always encourage, if you see a down wire, please consider it energized, stay away from the area, and report that to us immediately.
Liz Pratt with LG&E and KU. I know you guys are busy, so thank you for the time.
Thank you.
All right, on to the list of closings now, right? No school, no basketball games for JCPS. All games for the boys' regional basketball tournament today are rescheduled for Sunday afternoon. Manual will take on Trinity at 2:30 p.m. and Male will play Ballard at 4 p.m. Saturday's schedule will remain the same. The boys' 6th regional final will move to Monday at 7 p.m. The boys' 7th regional final will move to Tuesday, also at 7 p.m. A Shelby
WDRB weather is sponsored by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance.
The tale of two forecasts today, folks. We're looking at rain in southern Indiana. Now the storms are really starting to build up in Kentucky. That's where we start here with a live look at the radar. I want to zoom into a couple of spots here. The strongest thunderstorms approaching our area right now are racing. This line that you can see has a bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings on it and is just west of our southern communities. This is moving at 90 miles an hour. You're not legally allowed to drive that fast. That's how fast these storms are moving. You can see Bowling Green, it's moments away from you, the heaviest of the rain. Litchfield still about 15 minutes from you in E-Town. This is a half hour away from you still, but I'm particularly concerned about this area outside Rosewood, just south of Central City here. This is trying to wrap in on itself. We've told you for about a day now that everything today is going to be able to spin. That doesn't mean everything's going to produce a tornado, but it means all of these storms have our full and undivided attention. That one just south of Central City is one of them. This is a second. Outside of Paducah, this red box, that's the tornado warning, obviously not inside of our communities, but this is a second powerful line of storms. This one's moving at 65 miles an hour, generally headed our direction. And we had a report that that tornado had been observed, that that was a real tornado, not just the storm looks like it's spinning. My concern there is that that's where we're seeing a lot of sunshine. There's a lot of instability popping up between Paducah and here. Those storms are going to be able to really build before they get to our far western communities. You can see that on the satellite there. Now, for those of you not dealing with the tornadoes right now, obviously that's most of you, the wind also really starting to pick up, moving in from the south with gusts between about 20 and 30 miles an hour. Remember, we expect that to about double. That's why there's a high wind warning in effect for many of our communities. This through 1 a.m. The dark brown is that high wind warning. The lighter tan shading here, a wind advisory, just meaning the wind is still going to be strong in those spots, just not quite as strong. Here's the concern. We talked about that sunshine building up instability. We're building up a lot of that heat energy, that storm energy. And this is why I'm talking about two separate forecasts here almost. We're dealing with the threat of strong storms where you see temperatures in the 60s right now. That's enough energy to really pop these storms. Where you have temperatures in the 40s, the warm front has not hit you yet. You've been dealing with rain most of the morning. And so your threat of severe storms right now, obviously much lower. You need time to build up that storm energy before you're going to see the threat of severe storms, really the threat of tornadoes. With that in mind, the Storm Prediction Center has expanded the tornado watch to include almost all of our area. That's the yellow shading here. It's scrolling at the bottom of your screen. That means a tornado would be possible at any moment. The ingredients are there, they exist, and you need to be ready for that to happen. That's what we're prepared for here. And if you're not dealing with severe weather, you are dealing with flooding. The dark green and the red coloring here are active flood warnings. So let's walk through it hour by hour. We're watching the storms build very close with how this has been modeled, with how these predictions have played out. So this gives you good confidence that you can see those strongest storms setting up just southwest of our communities. Wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour, it's already happened. Take that to the bank inside of these thunderstorms. Outside of the storms, you're looking at gusts between 40 and 50 easily. As this moves into our southern communities where we have more energy, I'm concerned about gusts over 70 miles an hour, which can do damage. In fact, will just about do damage. I'm concerned that a lot of these are going to spin. We're already seeing that as well. And that threat is most likely in Kentucky today. Southern Indiana, you're not excluded, but we're seeing that energy, that destabilization happening in Kentucky right now. As the cold front passes through, it clears that out, and these storms are racing, folks, so it's now to 4 p.m. That's the window for the strongest storms. If you're concerned about weather, be on alert for the next couple of hours, 3 or 4 p.m. That's where this is really going to start to wrap up. We're not done with the rain completely, but we'll really be drying out once we get towards sunset and then through the weekend. The next 7 days, you can look at them here. They're also in your WDRB weather app if you'd like to take a look at the full forecast there.
Guys?
Well, we're now under a tornado warning. Hannah, we kind of knew, obviously, this was going to be the case, or I wouldn't be here standing next to you early, right. And Jude's here as well. So we're now starting to see these storms, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, that we were looking at some rotation. We were noting it near Hartford. Weather Service is obviously onto the same thing that we're seeing here. Some rotation, it's increasing. Now, the storm's not in our area, but this may be a sign of how the Weather Service is going to be dealing with these. This warning goes well in advance.
Right.
And so I think that we have such unbelievable wind energy here that the belief is that these are going to sporadically continue to produce tornadoes. And you can see this is the area we're watching, Breckinridge County, under a tornado warning here. This tornado warning was issued at 11:25, so this was issued just a couple moments ago. This is going to stay in effect until 12. So understand I'm talking central, so this would be 12:25 Eastern or 1 p.m. Eastern. And the Weather Service here, Hannah, this stuff is wild. It's moving 85 miles an hour. 85 wow. is elite level speed. The word that they're noting here is extensive straight line wind damage and a potential tornado. Again, I think this is a sign of what's to come because the National Weather Service is saying the extensive straight line wind damage and potential for tornadoes. We're going to need to be very aware this afternoon for us as Mets, as meteorologists, that these tornado warnings could occur extremely quickly and sometimes maybe a minute. We call this an in-between scan scenario, Hannah. This can happen sometimes where it's so fast that you're just not going to get a lot of warning on these.
Right, and folks probably heard you say, you know, the storm not actually inside of our communities yet. You're looking at that area of rotation that we're watching. It's just north of Rochester, just south of Beaver Dam. That's the spot that we're watching for some of this rotation. Let me draw a little circle so it attracts your attention. Not actually inside of our communities quite yet, but because of how fast these storms are moving. Remember, we talked about this minutes ago. This storm is moving 80 to 90 miles an hour. Like forward progress. That's not wind speed. That is forward progress. It would be like you driving a car 80 or 90 miles an hour. So the Weather Service has issued a large tornado warning, just extended it far enough in advance of that rotation that you get enough heads up, that you get enough warning to make the decisions that you need to make ahead of this storm. We also need to acknowledge that a lot of the things today are going to be spinning. So this is likely not the last time that you're going to see us. In fact, let me zoom out and just kind of give you a view of the area, get a good picture of what's going on. Yes, the strongest storms are approaching from the southwest, but that's not the only threat today. Obviously, we've seen a lot of flooding so far this morning in southern Indiana. Now the wind is starting to pick up. We're watching these storms rotating. We're watching them spin as they move into our western areas. And there's a second line of storms that's also popping up just as strong. Mark, we've been watching both of these lines of storms. You can see there's another tornado warning outside of Paducah.
That's confirmed.
That is confirmed. Help us understand how these two lines of storms interact with each other and what that's going to mean for us.
You know, it's intriguing as we look at this. The Weather Service is putting multiple warnings, and if you look at these and you're like, these are actually pretty big warnings, you're right. What happens here is we call these longer fuse warnings. We issue these longer fuse warnings when we are more confident. We know that these storms are dealing with literally extreme wind energy. I was asked today by somebody saying, you know, it's raining all morning. That means there's no severe weather threat, right? Under normal circumstances, I would say you are right. But this is not the normal circumstance because the low is so strong. The winds change direction as we go upward in the atmosphere. And Jude and Hannah can tell you the same thing, that this changes the rules. We see sometimes that when we get warm fronts across the area, this also enhances that directional wind change. Now we have both of these. This means that the storms are going to be able to prosper even in the lack of heating. Now, all of that said, back to what Hannah just noted, we've got a tornado warning here for Breckinridge County. You'll also notice that the tornado warning really banks up to Grayson County. Grayson County, you're not under a tornado warning now, but let's think about it. If you're in Caneyville, if you're in Litchfield, okay, I've got a tornado warning to my west. I'm going to go ahead and get things together. Also of note, these are moving at 85 miles an hour. So a lot of times you'll have, you know, if the storm's a county away from you, you've got 60 minutes. These are moving twice the normal speed, so cut down the advanced time that you're going to have on these. But you're watching near Litchfield. Hannah, let's look inside these storms, and I want to see what we have, and also if we can be just keeping an eye on analysts to make sure that we don't have any debris. So our area rotation that we're watching is near Beaver Dam. To be clear, that's not quite in our area yet. In fact, that rotation now is sitting right on top of Beaver Dam. So this is going to go right across the western Kentucky Parkway near Beaver Dam. It's basically between Beaver Dam and the Horse Branch area. Fordsville, we're talking about maybe 12 minutes from now before it gets to your area, and then that would breach into Breckinridge County in about 15. These are cooking along. Horse Branch 5 minutes from now, the Yeeman area 10 minutes from now, 16 minutes from now in Indian Valley, and 19 in McCoy. And back to what Hannah mentioned, as we take a look at the wider perspective, one of the concerns between this two-line scenario is there have been some breaks that we're seeing between these two. And I would tell you, if there's an area I'm most concerned about, it's this line here that's near Paducah. When we look at a lot of the data, it shows a better chance that we get a tornado or even a spin within this line. And that is where we had a confirmed tornado. That's the only confirmed tornado that we've had thus far. Remember, tornado warning in effect for Breckinridge County until 1 p.m. Jude, you've had your eyes looking at the analysts there, and that's one of the ways that we try to see if there's any debris. Under any of these areas, do we feel that we have confirmed, or are we still in the tornado possible situation?
Not locally. It doesn't look like anything would be confirmed. It looks like Doppler radar indicated. Certainly no debris or anything like that showing up on the radar, but the sheer fact that it's moving 80, almost 90 miles per hour straight line wind is going to be a big factor as it moves up towards Breckinridge County. And we do have our reporter Darby Bean, who's in Hardinsburg right now. She's ready to take shelter within the next 15 minutes or so at the public library. She's out by the public library ready to track these storms, get in behind them to safely follow them off to the northeast as they cook along. Again, back on the southern flank of this towards Morgantown, where we have tornado warnings, and these are expanding in coverage. Quick spin-ups, fast rotation. A lot of these potential tornadoes right now look to be somewhere in that, you know, a quick 80, 90 mile per hour wind gust, if we could get that as we go in between Rockport and Cool Springs. Something I feel that is very important to pass along right now is locally in Kentuckiana, our particular viewing area doesn't have that rotation there just yet. But since this isn't your typical day and they are moving fast, you know, you're talking about these things moving more than a mile a minute. That's almost unheard of. So you do not have a lot of reaction time as we track these in and eventually out of here as we head towards dinner time. But we're going to be on air quite a bit today as it's 12:34 right now. Pretty much guarantee we're going to be cutting in, unfortunately, to your programming for the rest of the afternoon, on and off. And once these storms, that second line gets even closer, I think we'll be on for quite some time, Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah, that warning is a huge warning in length.
Yeah.
Not the common that we normally see. This is a large length. It kind of reminds me back, you know, I don't think you're talking about a normal scenario where they issue those long fuse tornado warnings.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about, actually. It's just this warning doesn't look like the normal tornado warning that we come on here and show you a little box moving in a clear direction, right? This is a long track tornado warning. And in fact, the Weather Service said if we had extended this more than like 30 minutes in the future, it would wind up in Indiana, which we're not forecasting the tornado to hold together to get into Indiana. So that's what we're dealing with here. The storms are just moving so fast. Jude just said a mile a minute. It sort of struck me, if it struck you the same way, that these are racing. And so the warning boxes are going to look funny today. You've got to pay attention to when your area is included. So right now the guys are kind of showing you where that best area of rotation is. We're still highlighting the Beaver Dam community. This is moving to the northeast about 85 miles an hour. So you can see the list here of communities that are moments away from that area of rotation being in your neighborhood. Grab your lunch and take it to your safe place. We know we're with you during lunchtime. That safe place is the lowest level of your home. A one-story home, stay on that first level, but go into the most interior space in the house, putting as many walls between you and the outside as you can. And if you don't live in these communities, if Beaver Dam feels very far away from you, now is the time for you to figure out where you will go when these storms arrive. They're moving so fast, which is why we're giving you so much heads up here that these storms are headed your direction. They're moving northeast into the heart of our viewing area. Why do we tell you this? Why are we staying on with you before the storm even makes it inside of our communities? Because you're not going to have as much notice today before this arrives at your house. These storms are moving too fast. You're not going to get as much lead time as you're used to. That's why we're so glad that the Weather Service is issuing warnings that look like this, that just cover huge amounts of area, covering counties that stretch longer. I've not seen a tornado warning in our area that's this long in a really long time.
It is a huge tornado warning, and even just the tracking on these, Hannah, is tough to deal with because it's moving so fast.
Let's go ahead and take this full screen so you guys can get a look at this track. You can see the rotation at the bottom. We're looking for reds next to greens, or in this case, because the wind is so strong, bright greens next to darker greens. It means the same sort of thing. And you can see the track listed here. Horse Branch, you're about 5 minutes away from the strongest wind in that area where the storm is spinning. Patesville is still about 15 minutes away from you, and the Cloverport community 20 minutes. But a lot is going to change with this storm in the next 20 minutes because of how fast it's moving and how fast it's evolving. Guys, you've been watching the radar. Jude, what evolution are you seeing here? How's the storm changing?
I think we need to look up towards the river around Cannleton, Perry County, potentially about to get hit with some damaging winds as this moves off to the north. Another storm that we're going to show you on StormView HD radar. It's not under a warning right now, but down around Tell City, the leading edge of this starting to show that signature of some strong wind, maybe some rotation starting to take shape as this moves off to the northeast. 75, 80 miles per hour. This is something that we don't deal with very often. So just watching this currently as we look towards Tell City, Ranger, and Tazewell, ETA in the next 15 to 30 minutes. Want to reiterate, doesn't have a warning on it right now as we'll get back down towards Beaver Dam.
But that one's hooked up on the warm front.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the things that Jude's noting is that what we know is that where the warm front is located, you can get spinning a little bit quicker. So Jude is 100% on point in noting that area, keeping an eye on that. And now Jude's on the Beaver Dams area where we do have a tornado warning. But I'm with Jude on this one. I'm really watching what's near Cannleton very closely. For what it's worth, there is much more fuel on the second line. All of the analysis shows about 1,000 units of instability. On the current line that's coming into our area, it's about 250. So that is a quarter of the amount of instability. Why does that matter? It matters because we're going to need to go through maybe multiple lines here. As the break occurs, we would then have maybe a little bit of time to heat. And I'm not pretending that we're going to have a ton of time, but any time that we have to heat in a scenario like this is a problem. You know, I will say this one, we went in and cut in on this one early and kind of made the choice to stay cut in on this for a while, partially because we feel that we're going to see more warnings across our area. And if we're going to see warnings across the area, let's just stay with these storms. Let's get into this and let's watch them as they move through. Breckenridge County under a tornado warning. You can see the area of rotation right now is going to be just to the south of the Fordsville area, and you can clearly see there's actually multiple areas of rotation, and Jude even noted that there's some rotation near Tell City where the warm front's located. This just is going to be one of these issues where we're going to have to deal with multiple areas of rotation as this works its way across the area. And I will tell you, everywhere that you see a break in the line is showing that it could have some supercellular structure. Supercellular structure means rotation indeed possible. Still looking at a broad area of rotation near Tell City, but that said, it is right on top of Tell City, and I want to make sure that if we get a warning that you have note here in Tell City. Just be aware in Tell City and Lilydale, and then the Gatchel area. We do have an area of rotation. This is hooked on the warm front. We know that storms will tend to take advantage of that. The wind directional change along the warm front is normally drastic. And then when we look at the wide perspective here, remember, I think it's important to note, whether you get tornadic winds or not, the straight line wind damage potential here is also very substantial. And we could be seeing some 70, 75 mile per hour winds, what we refer to in meteorology as destructive winds. So destructive winds would indeed be possible as these come across the area. This is what we refer to as our analyst, Storm View 3D. And in Storm View 3D, I will tell you, when we look at this on the right here, these are two different products. So on the right side of the screen is your traditional radar reflectivity. This is what you look at every day. It shows rain. On this side, what we refer to this as normalized rotation. When we look in these areas here, and you can see they're all over the place, what we look for is green. When we get a green inside of that blue area, we a lot of times say green means go. So we need to watch here. That's interesting. Maybe anticyclonic rotation going the wrong direction in Cannleton. That is a unique one. But again, watching that Tell City area, that appears to be what we refer to as anticyclonic, meaning that storm is rotating the wrong direction. But you saw near Hartford, near Beaver Dam, this is getting now close to the Hardinsburg area, moving 80 miles an hour. If we're talking about Hardinsburg right now, I'd say, I know it looks like a long distance, but between 15 and 20 minutes is about the time you have to act on this. Guys, as you're looking at these two panels, are you seeing anything in there in the correlation coefficient that would say debris?
No, we're not seeing anything in CC yet that would suggest that. I mean, it's interesting that the entire line is spinning a little bit. That's what Mark was just showing you with that green means go, kind of seeing the blue and green next to each other. It's just a really simplistic way to say what part of this storm is rotating, is spinning. And the whole line that we've been tracking here, even outside of the tornado warning itself, it's all spinning. It is all spinning. So that's something that we're going to keep an eye on, obviously, through the next several hours. But as we go through the next few minutes, the immediate threat is the tornado warning. Okay, remember, we've got that ongoing tornado warning. It's going to last until 1 p.m. Okay, so we're with you for another about 15 minutes. We're going to stay with you no matter how long the threat lasts, but this warning is valid for about 15 minutes until 1 p.m. for parts of Breckenridge County. And as we look kind of at the wide view here, you're seeing this is not the only storm that's going on. There's
that warm front.
Yeah, that warm front. As we look up closer to Cincinnati.
3 tornado warnings in the northern part near Maysville, Kentucky.
Near Maysville. That's fascinating. We'll flip this back over to reflectivity and pull up the radar that's a little bit closer. There we can get you a good look and pull up a few of these different radars. But man, that is
Jackson,
just
if we can,
interesting.
That is way out in the middle of nowhere. I'm really curious on that. I'm going to take a closer look at that. Jude, what you're going to take a look at the wide perspective here. And by the way, that tornado warning, the Weather Service, when they sent out that warning, it had an error in the color. You can see very clearly see exactly where that warning is now, Jude.
One thing I wanted to look at is down on the southern side of this along I-65 right now, coming out of Bowling Green, because Greene, Taylor, Adair County, Hart County, LaRue County, we're seeing some rain, but as this line comes pulling your way within the next hour, it will most likely prompt severe thunderstorm warnings in a widespread fashion too, because coming up out of Nashville, there is a wall of damaging wind 60 to 75 miles per hour. Even as you pull this north, you'll see it right on the border. There's Portland. As you look at Franklin, right down through Nashville, this is our future, our near future, as we look towards the Cumberland Parkway. So from Columbia to Greensburg, I know know it's a long way off, but they're moving so quickly. Severe thunderstorms are headed in your direction. I know they're along I-65. You're not going to have a lot of reaction time. Now, as we head north from Bowling Green up towards Grayson County, we're in the path of some of those stronger winds. Currently, a lot of rain, and there's not much lightning in this. There's not much instability right now. I know we've warmed up into the 60s, but there is so much heavy rain currently in here with that wind field developing. You're not going to hear a lot of thunder, so don't wait for thunder and lightning to alert you. This is going to be some heavy rain moving in, and then all of a sudden that's dragging down some of the stronger winds aloft, looking for the bright colors. We make it easy for you. You always want to be following and taking your eyes, guiding towards something that pops out on you on TV, the bold colors. This is rain, but we're looking inside the storm where we've had the tornado warning ongoing, how the raindrops are moving in that storm, where you have some of that circulation, maybe not as pronounced as what it was 15 minutes ago. But in this scenario, a lot of times that circulation will go away for a little while and then come right back. So this is zipping to the north-northeast. 75 miles per hour is an estimated forward momentum right now. We don't have a tornado warning in the town of Hardinsburg. It comes very close, but far western Breckinridge County with that tornado warning. And then we'll follow this cell eventually that will cross the river up into southern Indiana with a wind threat. That doesn't mean it would be rotating, doesn't mean it's going to lead to a tornado, but we do have the likelihood of some strong winds here. Even if they don't reach severe weather criteria, wind speeds of 45 to 55 miles per hour. Looks like they have let that tornado warning expire. Can you guys confirm that tornado warning has expired?
They did allow it to expire, Jude. The rotation has come down, as you noted, and it appears that the whole line is getting now into the cooler air mass. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when you kind of look at everything, we have far more fuel in between these two lines on the area that's coming out of Madisonville. And I said this a moment ago, but I'll say it one more time. I believe that's the show. I believe if you're to look at one area that we need to watch, it's going to be what's coming out of the Paducah, the Madisonville area. That doesn't mean that these other storms aren't things to watch, because we will need to watch them closely. But we do not have any warnings on this line right now. You know, what I'll say here is we're going to stay with this through 1250. If we don't get any additional warnings at 1250, we'll send it back to programming, continue to watch, and we would update as we go later. But I just want to show you what's going on near Paducah, because that really, I believe, is going to be the main issue here. And you can kind of see, Hannah, the line in front getting into some of our rain-cooled air still had the ability to produce quite a bit of rotation. Right. But the back line, it's not the same scenario. There is a little bit warmth. And that line is going to be a far different situation. I think that's the one that we really have to watch the closest.
And Jude was pointing out earlier, in between these two lines, what you don't see here because you're looking at a radar product is there's some sunshine there. Yeah. And so that has really fueled. I could throw that on. Yeah, this has really fueled that second line, Jude, right?
That line is directly attached to the low pressure as well, which is over around Paducah up towards Mount Vernon. So this is the one that's going to be torqued up like crazy as it starts to spin. So as that's interacting with really the strongest low pressure that parts of the Ohio Valley will have ever seen in recorded history, the wind is going to pick up, even non-thunderstorm winds, as we get later into the day. That's why we go to the high wind warning and the chance for non-thunderstorm winds of 60, almost 70 miles per hour.
And I think, you know, when you look at the data, we all talked about this, but once that secondary line goes by, it does appear that there is going to be a period of sun after that. And while I would tell you that the severe weather threat, the tornado, severe thunderstorm warning threat might go down, that straight line wind, the gradient wind, those regular winds, that's when they're going to come up. A lot of the data shows that we could have some 65 pluses. And you know, somebody might say, you know what, Mark, on Monday we had 65 plus, and that would be accurate. We're not going to disagree with that statement. The hope here is that with trees not having as many leaves on them, that would help us a little bit. Obviously, we have wet grounds. That may set things back just a little bit. One also thing I do want to note, our weather company is having some odd issue. We're not completely sure as to what it is, but these three warnings in the northern part of Kentucky that appear as tornado warnings, we have indeed clarified they are not. It did appear to be in a weird spot. You heard Hannah use the word fascinating, and it was fascinating because because it doesn't belong there. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye. The bottom line here as we look right now is we've got thunderstorms within our area right now that are not severe. We've got a thunderstorm that's severe just south of our area. I think what we're going to do is we're going to move back to programming, continue to monitor the storms. If we do get any more tornado warnings, which I think we will, we will be right back into programming. So keep it right here on WDRB for continuing weather updates. So we're entering in now what's likely going to be a long duration cut in here because we have high and severe thunderstorm warnings with 80 miles per hour winds. We warned about this yesterday. We talked about it today. Jude mentioned it this morning that wind gusts could get north of 70 miles an hour. We're now into that reality. We have a confirmed tornado coming out of Evansville moving towards Du Bois County. It is not in Du Bois County at this point, but I think that's where we're most concerned about tornadoes. So let's get caught up on what we have across our area on the now. Remember, we have a wind advisory in the northern part of our area. We have a high wind warning for Louisville. Generally, most locations south of the river. The tornado watch shows a good chunk of our area, exclusion being Lawrence, Jackson, Jennings, which kind of opens the question. Those storms are one county away from Jackson, Lawrence counties, and I'm not sure how the Weather Service or Storms Prediction Center would deal with this, but I do think a local extension is going to be necessary. The severe thunderstorm warning for Du Bois, Perry, Breckenridge, Grayson, Western Meade, and Hardin are elevated severe thunderstorm warnings for destructive winds of 80 miles per hour.
That is rare.
That is rare.
So rare.
And I think that's important to note, Jude. A severe thunderstorm is 60. When we talk 80, this is the kind of wind that will do damage to homes, siding, roofs, trees, things like that. This is not your ordinary run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm. And that's the reason why we're going to be with these for some time. So Jude's going to take me up and down the line so we can look at what we have ongoing as we stand right now. The tornado confirmed was for Henderson and Posey County. And Jude, if you could, let's turn off the warning layer just so we can actually see a little more. So let's go up and down this line. And I want to show you where it is and where it's going because we're going to need to storm track these, and they are moving exceptionally fast. So right now, the concern for a tornado is going to be near the Barton and Patoka area. This one ultimately heading towards Petersburg and may go north of Jasper. Regardless of whether we get a tornado out of this or not, we need to be thinking about the other part of this. These are moving 80 miles an hour and they're producing 80-mile-an-hour winds. So I think Jude put it at 40 miles an hour, so I'm going to half all of these times because it's moving so fast. Carter 2 minutes from now, Jasper in the 6 to 7 minutes from now, Harbison around 8 minutes from now. I'm going to put it in Barr around 9 to 11 minutes from now. I'm going to put it in English around 14 to 16 minutes from now. Think about that. If I just mentioned your town, 80-mile-an-hour winds are heading towards your area. Those are wind gusts that are higher than what would be sustained in a hurricane. Now, sometimes people are like, they'll make a fair point. Hurricanes we measure in sustained winds, and that's right. The term hurricane force, though, would be fair to say in this situation. So as we move down the line, we're talking Tell City about 7 minutes from now. We're talking Short Creek around 10 minutes from now. Oil, prepare yourself for 80-mile-an-hour winds about 15 minutes from now. And you can see where the most intense part of the line is. This is it. In my opinion, this is the show. The show right now getting very close to Tell City through Bowling Green. Now you will notice the southern part of the line breaks down some. This is where it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Can this hold together towards Louisville, number one? Number two, if it does and the line breaks, does that mean we elevate the tornado threat a little bit? These are two scenarios that could absolutely occur. We also have severe thunderstorm warnings here, including just west of Greensburg, near Center and near the Munfordville area. And Jude's grabbing right on where those strongest winds are located, which puts it in Greensburg in around 4 minutes from now, Gresham around 6 minutes if you're in Saloma, 17 minutes from now, Campbellsville about 15 to 18 minutes, and 31 from Lebanon. These warnings for the southeast counties, Hannah, you've been watching those closely, 70 or 80s on, southeast, 70 or 80s on those counties, the Munfordville, the Greensburg. What are we on the speed on those?
70s.
Okay, those are 7 zeros?
Right, 7 zeros. So Mark, your Mark, he's Jude. Mark is talking about the kind of the leading edge. We talked about this the first time around in one wave, the first wave, and then the second round that would follow. So what you are seeing on your screen right now on the left side, that's round number 2. That's what we've been talking to you about for those 80-mile-per-hour gusts, that tornadic potential. And I've been watching kind of our analyst radar that looks a little bit more inside the storms, and a lot of this is rotating. A lot of this presents a little bit of spin. I'll go ahead and flip over here. On the left side of your screen, that's what we call kind of the normal view. It's reflectivity. This is what you're used to seeing. On the right-hand side of your screen, this is what we call storm relative velocity. It lets you look at the wind, direction, and movement inside of a storm. And I think we've kind of trained you guys well. Reds next to greens usually means rotation, but we have a product that actually kind of eliminates all the noise, just looks at the rotation. The fact that we have blues next to greens on the left-hand side of the screen and red next to green, it all means the same thing. It means that every part of this line has the chance to spin. This is the second round, though. I want to emphasize this. This is kind of the back line that we've been watching. Mark asked the question to begin with about this front line. So this warning that we're looking at that's out ahead of it, that's approaching the Campbellsville area, that includes Edmonton. This is for wind that is still incredibly strong and capable of doing damage at 70-mile-per-hour gusts. But at this point, that's the weaker of the two lines.
Right.
Who thinks like that? 70-mile-per-hour gusts, that's the weaker of the storms that we're watching today. But that's the deal here. 70-mile-per-hour gusts, and not that this isn't rotating, because it is. You can also see, I'll do the same thing over here, putting that rotation product kind of on the left-hand side of your screen and that storm relative, so you can see inside of the storm on the right side of your screen. This is not spinning in on itself as much. We're not seeing that tight rotation inside of the storm. We're seeing strong wind. That's why you're seeing kind of a line of blue on the left-hand side of your screen. So strong wind there, gusts up to 70 miles an hour. As we zoom out, give you a picture of those two lines that we're talking about. On the right-hand side of your screen, in fact, we'll go ahead and just take this down to one panel, make it easier. On the right-hand side of your screen here, that's the first line. It doesn't look as organized. It doesn't look quite as powerful, as put together, and yet it's producing 70-mile-per-hour, I should say the potential for 70-mile-per-hour gusts. We've had reports of 60s for sure in that southern edge. The line that's on the left-hand side of your screen, that's the power right now. Jude, this is one that you've been watching pretty carefully for the last, well, gosh, a couple hours at this point. What do you see here?
Well, I see the winds that you were just showcasing that are around 70 miles per hour on the radar and probably down at the surface. This is near the I-65 corridor as we look at Greensburg down through the Columbia area over towards Edmonton, moving to the north-northeast at around 70 to 75 miles per hour, and then back out west to that extensive line that feeds up towards Evansville, approaching Du Bois County, where we have had a history of a tornado on the ground as we focus out around Evansville with that powerful line that will race to the northeast close to 80 miles per hour with that 80 mile per hour movement getting down to the surface is something that is just no joke. This is not fooling around here. So Du Bois County, as we go from Santa Claus out around Holiday World right up to Jasper, you know, you're talking about a real large city here, and then down towards Ferdinand, we are just moments away from getting these straight line winds gusting 70 to 80 miles per hour is what we've been finding, which is a Category 1 hurricane, strong tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane force winds likely in this. It's not going to last that long. This thing's like 8 miles wide. The most intense rain, some lightning, and these gusty winds will blow in. It's going to get wild for a little bit. It'll calm down for a little while, and then there's another round of strong wind that will come in behind this low pressure that has set a record in Evansville for the lowest pressure ever recorded. So that's something we're dealing with here as this moves over along the river. There's Tell City. So we go from Perry County and then down through Breckenridge into Meade County, watching everything plow to the northeast. I know it's a while off from Louisville, but this is coming to Louisville. Still the estimated time of arrival, as we said earlier today, for the entire area, that noon to 4 outlook. So, you know, by 3 o'clock, this thing's going to be heading up towards Metro Louisville and the larger populated areas. Right now, as we look towards Hardinsburg and Oil, focus on Breckenridge County in the next 10 to 20 minutes, Rhineyville in around 30 minutes. Right now on top of Whitesville, just outside of Kentuckiana over towards Owensboro, but this is not your run-of-the-mill motion most of the time we'd have a little bit of, wait time for this to let it arrive. This is not a day where you can sit back and relax. It's here before you know it. So Breckinridge County, down into Grayson County, and then back towards Hart County, where we've already had some severe weather. That next line will move through, although it's the southern tip just north of Bowling Green that has the likelihood for some severe weather. So this show is just now starting. We have a couple more hours, I'd say a solid 2 hours, 2.5 hours to watch this cross into our western counties and then move off to the east and try to leave here by around 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
Have to watch really, really closely. Number one, there is a tornado warning just west of Jasper. And I can tell you, as we look at the velocity here, I'm just going to scope the area. What you're going to notice is there's a lot of these areas where the red and the green are right next to each other. This is the part of the line that when you look at a lot of the data is showing that if tornadoes are going to occur, this is what we refer to as the triple point of the low. It's where the warm front, the cold front, and the low come together. A lot of the data shows that this would be our greatest propensity to produce a tornado. Now, anywhere within this line, since it's moving so fast, and the wind field is so ridiculously strong, tornadoes can form with very, very little notice. 80-mile-an-hour winds moving into Tell City in the next 4 minutes, Cloverport in the next 6 to 8 minutes, Tar Fork around 8 to 12 minutes. And then here are things that we're going to be looking at, Jude, where those lines break, like where it breaks in Horse Branch, where it breaks in the Welch's Creek, Hannah. These are areas that we are going to need to watch because sometimes within these breaks in the line, you can get these more quick spin-ups. So these are areas to watch very, very closely. As it stands right now, National Weather Service is warning on these areas for 80-mile-per-hour winds. I'm getting reports now from ham radio out of Fordsville. This is just west of our area where the line is going through. Strong winds and rain reported. Power is out 6 miles south of Fordsville. So we got a report of power out now. 61-mile-an-hour winds from the Mesonet as the storms went through the Bowling Green area. The National Weather Service, by the way, has now extended the high wind warning to include Clark, Crawford, Du Bois, Floyd, Harrison, Perry County, also Breckinridge, Hancock, Meade, Ohio, and Trimble County. So we now have even more. And Jude's got the winds up there. Jude, Madisonville just gusted to 61. Litchfield's coming in at 44. E-Town is at 46-mile-an-hour winds. And we've got very strong winds across our area, and they're only going to be coming up. Hannah, you've been watching these breaks within the line, and I'm going to come over to Stormview 3D. Are you seeing anything that concerns you in terms of one of those quick spin-ups, one of those signals that can happen very quickly?
Yeah, I don't really like what we've got going on north of Horse Branch. This is one I've been watching closely for a couple of scans now, so I'm going to walk you backwards here. This scan, man, that really grabbed my attention. You're about 5 minutes old here. This is an old scan. I'm going to keep going backwards, so we're just rewinding. This right about here is where this really started to jump out at us. Nature likes everything to be the same, so where you see little tails hanging off of anything, like what's going on just south of the really bright red area around Beaver Dam, where you've got a little tail hanging off, not great. I mean, something weird is going on. So now we're going to fast forward. We're walking forward in time. And remember, we're looking for bright red right next to bright green on the right-hand side of your screen. And there it is. This is still an old scan. This is not current. But just on the left side here, just on the west side of Horse Branch, that really grabbed my attention. Now that's got to line up with the storm itself, so I placed a marker here. It's a little tricky to see. I'll zoom in. There's a bright red dot there. Bright red dot lines up with the high reflectivity. So that tells me that's a powerful part of the storm. We always watch the south end. That's where you can ingest that really warm, humid air and get that storm some extra power. So now we're walking forward again, and this is the current scan. I don't like that there are breaks in the line anywhere. I think we're seeing some signs of rotation here, and it's part of the storm I want to watch carefully, Mark.
And Hannah, that even the Weather Service has noted on that storm, for what it's worth, that a tornado is possible. So keep watching that one, because these things will happen very, very, very quickly. Jude, you've been looking also at the storm that's near Ferdinand, and we are noting rotation here as well. So this one will be southwest of Ferdinand by about 14 miles. So that would put it in Ferdinand in about 12 minutes. That is Du Bois County. We are seeing an area rotation. My guess, Jude, would be as if that holds for one more scan, the Weather Service may need to upgrade that area. And that jives with where the triple point is. This is what a lot of the high-res data is showing where the greatest tornado potential would be, Jude.
Yes, Du Bois County, I would say within the next 5 minutes, that rotation, if it's still there, will be in your county. Regardless, rotation, no rotation, this is the storm that has the capability of 80-mile-per-hour straight line winds. This is also headed towards Perry County. Another spot, two of them coming together in between Liberal and Newtonville, and then up towards Gentryville. You can see how that green and red, you hear us talk about it all the time. They start to link up, one there, another one right on top of Liberal. So these are areas of spin that could very well produce a tornado, maybe staying on the ground for a short period of time, lifting back up. But once we see these, they very well could come back and forth, go in and out. Once they're there, they seem to stick around for a little while.
And what we tried to mention this morning, we mentioned it last night. I think a benchmark for this area is what happened on March 2nd, 2012. That was when the Henryville tornado occurred. And I think knowing that as a benchmark is an important one. I think we all kind of know that that's what we compare much against. And I think it's important to note here, we don't have a signal that would show these ultra-violent, very long-track tornadoes. What shows up in the data is swaths of straight-line wind damage with potential for some tornadoes. Now, if you're asking me, could you get a stronger tornado? You just because it's brief doesn't mean that you can't get, let's say, an EF1 or an EF2 tornado. Those actually can occur. And we are going to need to watch this line. Honestly, these winds are brutal right now that are heading into Litchfield. Those are way up in the blue category. Jude, can you marker those? I'm kind of curious how strong those are. He's going to track it quickly. Remember, it's going at 80. So Hardinsburg, 10 minutes from now. That is very strong wind. In the Woodrow area, 15 minutes, 19 minutes from now in Irvington, and 27 minutes from now in Brandenburg. Remember, this is not your run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm warning. The regular severe thunderstorm warning, we generally don't cut in as much. When we have what we refer to as elevated severe thunderstorm warnings, we tend to go live longer. We are going to stay with these because this is an 80-mile-an-hour severe thunderstorm warning that has potential to do a lot of damage. Jude's marking that north of Horse Branch, showing around 64-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Remember, radar is instantaneous, so if those go up to 80 in between scans, we don't catch that. We catch what it sees in that moment. So what does this mean for Louisville? What you can clearly see is Louisville is likely to be on the end of that line. Now, I will tell you, this is what is showing up in the high-res data as well. There are two scenarios that could happen here for Louisville. If this was to break down and have a supercell at the tail, I believe this is the least likely of this scenario. That would mean we'd need to watch that for a tornado threat. In my opinion, what is the more likely scenario is the southern line is going to start to ingest the rain from the eastern line. And what that would do is give it even less fuel than it has. That may minimize that severe potential. And so you're like, okay, we're great. We don't have anything to worry about. Well, remember, we have the gradient winds that are going to be picking up, and these will pick up once the front goes through, or once this line goes through. I think I'm worried a little bit about this. I'm worried that a lot of people are going to say, okay, the line came through, it's all over. No. That's when the strongest gradient winds occur. That's when some 60, 65 plus straight line winds without thunderstorms can occur. It's showing up as we look at the Mesonet data, and it is real, and we need to watch for that. Perry, Du Bois County severe thunderstorm warning until 2:30 Eastern, another 30 minutes. The most intense part of the line goes from Jasper through around Ferdinand, through Tell City, and this is going to put it in Jasper in 2 minutes. Jasper, these winds are going to be coming out of the west and southwest. Stay away from those windows on that side of the house. If there was to be wind that blew in windows, it's going to be on the western side of your house. If you don't know which is the western side of your house, grab your phone, click the compass, and figure it out and stay away from those windows. And that would go for areas like Jasper, southward through Tell City to around Litchfield, because the winds are going to be coming really, really strong out of the west. And even if a tornado forms, we know that the storms are moving 80 miles an hour. So think about, let's just say a tornado is rotating at 80 miles an hour. Well, on the northern side, that speed that it's moving on the ground is going to be equal to the rotation. So moving this way, it's going to cancel out the north side. In scenarios like this, as a forensic meteorologist, I found this many, many times, but the northern side of a tornado would show no damage where the southern side would. So the southern side would have westerly winds. That would be what we need to be worried about the most. Still rotation near Carter near Santa Claus. It does put Du Bois County in an area to watch the closest, and we don't want to minimize the other concern here, and that is we have flash flooding, and we did have some rescues in our area. There is still more heavy rain moving across the area. There are many threats within this scenario, including damaging winds, including the very strong gradient winds, and then including the flash flood concern here. Just a recap of where our warnings are in effect right now. You can see the tornado watch covering a chunk of our area. The tornado warning that was west of Du Bois County has been allowed to expire. Tornado warning remains in effect for Du Bois, Perry, Breckenridge, Grayson, Hardin County. And Hannah, you've been watching the reports coming in. Have we really had any reports of touchdowns or rotating wall clouds or things that would be precursors of tornadoes?
We're starting to get a couple of things that I think would lead us to believe that around the Evansville area, that storm that's headed toward Du Bois County now, produced at the very least some really strong wind in a rotating storm. You can see the report there that's just coming in via the National Weather Service. Shingles off of a roof, siding off of a house, trees down. That's just one of actually a couple of reports that have come in from that area of some damage that, again, we don't know in the moment if that was caused by a strong wind gust or by a potential tornado. That's something that had a tornado warning on it at the time. You can see another report there in Rockport. Trees down, power poles as well. Along Highway 161. That's just north of Owensboro, so looking a little bit farther south there. We're also getting some unconfirmed reports. I'm not going to share those quite with you yet. I want to make sure those are confirmed, but definitely the rotation that produced that tornado warning and that's now headed toward Du Bois County, that's got my attention. Based on the damage that it's done, based on what people say they saw with their eyeballs, we've got to keep a close eye on that. And like we've been talking about all day, this is a system where large parts of these lines are going to spin. We just looked at that a few moments ago. Every part of the line can spin a little bit, but they're also going to spin up pretty quickly. Given how fast these storms are moving and just how quickly the wind is moving inside of the storm itself, it's pretty easy for something to pulse up really quickly here, which is why we're on with you and we're going to stay on with you. Yes, the wind is unusually strong and presents a threat to you. That's why we're here. We don't just jump on your television to hear ourselves talk, believe it or not. We're here because we believe that the weather is threatening to you right now, and this is that scenario. Wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour are significant. They are capable of doing real damage. That's why we're here. And as we're scrolling down the line here, moving a little bit farther south, you're seeing some of those breaks in the line, some little kind of twists and knobs hanging off. Again, that's something we want to watch pretty carefully because that's where we can see some of that rotation, Jude.
And our reporter Darby Bean, who is in Hardinsburg, reporting right now that they are in the basement of the courthouse in Hardinsburg in Breckenridge County as that severe thunderstorm is moving through. The winds are picking up right now in Hardinsburg, about to gust potentially 70 miles per hour, if not higher than that. So she is in a safe place. She went down to Breckenridge County and will be following this storm as it moves through.
I'm concerned about what's going on in Huntingburg.
They just issued a tornado warning.
Okay, that's exactly where I'm looking right now. That rotation there is legit, guys. Let's go over to 3D real quickly. I'm going to head over to the wall. Very concerned. We now have a tornado warning in effect for Crawford, Du Bois, Orange County. Is that correct, Hannah? Crawford, Du Bois, Orange?
Crawford, Du Bois, Orange, and Perry counties until 2:45.
Crawford, Du Bois, Perry, and Orange County now under a tornado warning. So on here is the normal reflectivity that you see. If you look, let's zoom this out just a touch. I just want to be able to give reference point here for the tornado warning. So the tornado warning includes Huntingburg and then goes southward. Let's just see if that includes Tell City. Jude, if you could zoom me in just now a touch, a little bit more. Just want to make sure that we're, okay, so towards St. Meinrad area, and then it's going to include Celestine through Birdseye. So on the other side here, you have what we refer to as the velocity. This, we have over the years tried our best to teach you. It's not really necessarily important to know what those numbers are, but it's important to note where the red and the greens come together. This right here, near just west of Ferdinand, had me very, very concerned, and then the tornado warning came out. I'm going to keep my hand here, and let's, if we could, switch over to correlation coefficient. So what this product here does in the pink is we would look for a blue hole. If a blue hole occurs in the pink, it's telling us that the particles are different sizes. You're like, who cares? Here's why you should. Let's just say a tornado hits a house. It now throws pieces of wood or shingles or things like that up in the air. So when we see those different size particles underneath an area of rotation, where it's raining, and we know that the particles should all be the same size. Raindrops are generally the same size. it concerns us. So we don't have a signal of a tornado. And let's roll that back. Are you guys seeing the same thing as I am? It looks like the rotation may have come down a notch or two. Let's go back one more. So this is when the rotation was starting to ramp up, and you can see it moving northward, approaching the Huntingburg area, getting strong just west of Ferdinand. And then on the latest scan, it does look like it's come down just a little bit in intensity. This is what we do when we do live coverage on our severe systems, is we're able to assess and analyze in the moment of what is happening. Hannah, you're the one that is controlling StormView 3D right now. Do you see the same thing I am? It looks like that rotation has come down maybe a tick off the last scan.
I do see the the thing that you see, and the same point I want to emphasize, whether we're talking about a tornado because the storm is rotating, or we're talking about strong wind gusts capable of moving to 75 or 80 miles an hour, does it matter to you in that moment what the wind is doing? It's going to do damage. That's, I think, what we're seeing outside Huntingburg right now. So yeah, we really saw that couplet tighten up. That rotation clearly spun up for a moment, and you just saw that new scan come in here. I totally support this tornado warning. And now I think we're watching that rotation maybe pulse down a little bit. It doesn't look quite as tight, quite as organized, but we're still seeing it will. I think it will pulse back up, and we're still seeing intense wind there as well. The bright red color there tells you the wind is stronger than just kind of a normal warning. And we don't issue warnings all the time. The Weather Service, I should say, doesn't issue warnings all the time. So whether it's 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, whether it's a tornado, this is something that's capable of doing damage in either sense, regardless.
Listen to this, by the way, Hannah. Terre Haute Airport just fell to a pressure of 981.5 millibars, breaking the record for the lowest pressure ever measured at that site. So now we have Evansville with the lowest pressure ever measured. I believe Paducah earlier in the day broke the pressure record for the lowest pressure ever measured. And now we have Terre Haute.
Tell us what that means.
Yeah, and that's a fair thing. I've been asked many, many times, what does it mean when we're talking about a low pressure? So the low pressure is simply a measure of the intensity of the storm system. So a hurricane, normally a Category 1 hurricane's in the 990 millibar area. Sometimes you get Category 2 hurricanes in the 970s. Is this a fair comparison? Partially no, because hurricanes are just different animals, but it at least can give you an idea. We're telling you that the parent low that's generating all of these winds has broken the record in several sites in the Midwest now and in the Ohio Valley for the most intense low that we've ever seen. Jude, you are staring down some areas of rotation again from near Ferdinand, and we watch these things. They're pulsing, they're going up and down. Some of these may be downdrafts that one there now looks like it may be a little outflow dominated south. But these areas of rotation, it's going to be very, very difficult. I would say, if you're asking me where the greatest threat of a tornado would be to occur, I would absolutely say we need to watch in Du Bois County. We have seen multiple areas of rotation. It's near the triple point of the storm system. And the other part to this is Du Bois County has seen 3.5 inches of rain.
Right.
So, on top of that, the winds are 70, 80 mile an hour winds, could topple trees quite easily because of the amount of rain. That's softened the root systems. So there's a lot going on here. We have tornado warnings, we have severe thunderstorm warnings. The severe thunderstorm warnings still are ahead of that tornado warning. Orangeville, English. Severe thunderstorm warnings go southward through around the Hardinsburg area. I think we need to also speak to this. These are 80 mile an hour winds that are approaching Brandenburg right now. Please use caution. These are dangerous storms that are moving across our area. Jude, we've been watching these. There is interest in that second line in terms of a greater severe potential, but on the southern side, it's going to be a challenge in terms of what that means for Louisville.
Right, yeah, watching down towards Litchfield, the southern edge of this, as it all moves off to the northeast. It's coming in fast. It's now 2:18, getting everyone caught up on what's going on. All of the focus on this line, about 10 miles wide, heavy rain, lightning. The main threat right now, damaging winds, 70, potentially 80 miles per hour, all gusting out, but also where we have that tornado warning. It's not a real pronounced area of rotation and a lot of spin, but there are a few locations where it comes up, comes and goes. And right now, even before we look into velocity and how it's moving around, you can see a little hook there that was just south of Huntingburg on the reflectivity where we're showing the rain. So there's definitely some winds that are twirling. This is all feeding into that record-setting strong low pressure as it moves through southern Indiana right now. So along 231, linking up with 64, it's now pushing off to the northeast. The worst of it out in Du Bois County is moving just north of I-64 from Ferdinand in terms of that first tornado warning circulation, which prompted everything. Now looking down towards I-64 on the south side, a new area of rotation popping up. These things are like needles in a haystack, really tiny. They'll come and they'll go. You know, a couple minutes from now, this might be gone, but we're looking at this portion of the storm. This is the closest storm to the actual low pressure. So this is the one, while it doesn't have a lot of instability because it's cooler, it has the most amount of spin in the atmosphere to really get it revved up. On top of Ferdinand, we pulsed up the lightning. Sometimes that's an indicator of a tornado about to happen. As you watch where you get that electricity, a little more updraft, a little more strong wind motion in that thunderstorm. So focus now a couple miles north of I-64, headed towards Birdseye, St. Mark's all the way towards Birdseye, Siberia. And a little kink in there down towards Addyville, another little kink there, Sassafras, Doolittle Mills. This is all moving up towards Orange County. Crawford County, the Hoosier National Forest, this is a dangerous place to be. That's starting to become a little more pronounced as well over towards Bristow. And you could go up and down this entire line and almost make an argument for a couple moments where you see some rotation pop up. You're like, well, maybe we should do a tornado warning. With the National Weather Service putting out severe thunderstorm warnings because the wind speeds could be close to 80 miles per hour, that's almost the same thing is a weak EF0, EF1 tornado. So it's sort of like flipping things back and forth. This is going to do some damage that a weak tornado could do, even if it's not rotating and spinning around. We look at the severe thunderstorm warning over towards Litchfield. This is the most southern portion of that severe storm. I have a feeling within the next few moments, the National Weather Service will probably put out a whole slew of new warnings as we watch these plow to the northeast. Rhineyville, PRP, Louisville, ETAs in the next 15 to 30 minutes.
Just got the new severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible. They have lowered the wind speeds just a hair from 80 to 70. Severe thunderstorm warning just issued for Crawford, Harrison, Perry, Breckenridge, and Meade. So now this takes the warnings, banking up them just west of Louisville. That said, you know, I think what we're seeing here is almost exactly what showed up in the high-res data. Some legitimate questions on the south line, the southern side of Louisville. It is conceivable may see that line completely weaken. But as we look towards Brandenburg, north to English, through around Bedford and Salem, my concern is higher. This showed up in the high res. People ask sometimes, well, you know, why does Louisville get missed sometimes? You know what? In 1974, Louisville didn't get missed. Some people are like, well, the storms always go north of Louisville. You know what? In 1996, when Bullitt County got hit by the EF4 tornado, that storm started in Floyd County, came across through Jefferson County, and dropped a huge tornado in Bullitt County. So there are no rules. Sometimes it works one way. Sometimes it works the other way. Watching for these dangerous winds, and just got a report here of a semi blown over on I-64 at the 58-mile marker. If we could just make sure news is aware of that particular one. A semi has been blown over on I-64 at the 58-mile marker. And also one other report, by the way, in Bowling Green, report of a White Castle sign at Scottsville Road fell over in Bowling Green.
No.
And what we have here, continued severe thunderstorm warnings for Perry, Breckenridge, Grace, and Hardin. We added also Orange County into that and Washington County. We also have Harrison County in the warnings as well. These are elevated. Right. These are not your lower end warnings, or we wouldn't be in. These are warnings that could produce 70, 80 mile an hour winds, which are gusts that we sometimes refer to as hurricane force gusts.
With good reason. So right now you're looking at a traffic camera from I-64 in Birdseye, which is one of these areas that you've heard us call out a couple of times here recently as the strongest wind is headed there right now. That's a place that is actively under a tornado warning. We had that semi reported blown over. I think that mile marker 58, is that right? Can you double check that?
58 on 6-4.
On I-64.
Yes.
So this is an area that you're looking at right now. The camera will update here. Again, it's a traffic camera, so we know resolution is not the greatest, but this is in the middle of where we have that ongoing threat of strong, damaging wind gusts. We're just going to kind of let this play out, I think, for a few minutes and see. The line of strongest wind within this storm is about to cross this area. In fact, if we could put the radar on camera with this camera, you'll get a really good look at what we're talking about here. So this traffic camera, again, I-64 near the Birdseye community. This is where we're seeing the strongest wind right now. See the brightest coloring here, the bright reds and oranges? That's kind of shorthand for where the strongest wind is. It's actually where we're seeing heavy rain as well. But that's why we have this traffic camera pulled up, hoping to get a good look inside of this storm right now that's actively got a tornado warning. Now, Mark just pulled up 4 other cameras. This is such a great look. Look at the difference between E-Town and Corydon.
You know, and that in E-Town is concerning, not necessarily for severe weather per se. I think this is an important thing to note, Hannah.
Yep.
Once this line goes through, I think a lot of people are going to be like, you know what, I got nothing to worry about. But that is not reality. What happens when the line goes through is then the strong gradient winds come in. I mentioned this yesterday, but the data really indicated in the 3 hours beyond this initial line that the winds would become the strongest. I'm going to show you the current wind gusts right now because I'm curious. Madisonville measuring a 62, Paducah 46. We've got a 46-mile-an-hour wind gust just measured in Hardinsburg and a 42 in Litchfield. And once that main line goes through, we're going to need to watch for those potential very strong winds. You know, here's the reality of this whole situation, and I'm back on radar, Jude, just so you know, is that this low has become the most intense low pressure ever to move through Paducah, Evansville, and Terre Haute thus far. I've been asked, you know, when we talk about that low pressure is just a measure of how intense. Think about it like this: the lower the pressure, the more intense the low. I know that sounds repetitive. The higher the pressure, the more intense the high. The more intense the low pressure, the more winds it has, the more threats that come with it. And that's what this storm has. I will say that I think that we're going to see still in particular in the western part of our area, a tornado threat and a high-level wind threat in terms of 70s potentially. But in terms of the tornado or the part for Louisville, there remain deep question marks in how well that portion of the line is going to come through. 3 minutes from now in Oil, 16 minutes from now in English, and 19 minutes from now in the Switzer crossing area. Hannah?
Yeah, if we can interrogate where that tornado warning is, that's where I want to camp out here for a moment, because I think we've seen this evolve a little bit. So we jumped on here, said that there were the potential for 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We had the threat of some tornadoes. Now we take a look at this tornado warning box. It's essentially taking up your entire screen here. There are still a couple of areas we want to draw your attention to. Put some arrows on them for easy access. Right along Indiana 545 there, right along the highway, you can see a couple of these spots from Birdseye all the way up the highway. But I'll tell you, these don't look quite as impressive now as they did about 10 minutes ago. Strong wind is almost assured here. We're seeing some really strong gusts inside of this storm. But some good rotation in this particular scan. You walk it forward and you can just see, keep your eye on where it says Hall right here on the map. Just keep your eye focused there. As we walk it back, that looks tight, and then it spreads apart. Those just get farther away from each other. It looks like it got strung out. Think about a cotton ball. You pull it apart. That's what my eyeballs see here, right around where we've put that marker on that says Hall. And that's not the only place I think that's doing that. That suggests not that the storm is weakening. It suggests that we're getting some strong wind inside of the storm that's sort of trying to tear that rotation apart a little bit. Now we got to keep a close eye on it because that can also pulse back into rotation pretty quickly. So the storm is still actively spinning. It's still actively moving within the storm itself. But at the moment, I think we're seeing a little bit of a transition to some strong wind gusts within that tornado warned area. And it's not just there. The entire line here is seeing a similar transition. And it's a wide range of communities that are impacted here. Strong wind gusts, 70 to 80 miles an hour possible, racing off to the northeast in these communities within the next few minutes. Paoli, this is moments away from you. And you are close to that tornado warning. So this is a good time for you to be in your safe place. Take a snack, sit with us for a few minutes. Make sure you got your phone handy. You can pull up our coverage there as well. Bedford, you can see that you're only about 10 or 15 minutes away. Salem, closer to 20 minutes. And now we're getting closer to the Louisville Metro. This is on the south edge of this line, but New Albany, this is only about 20 or 25 minutes away from you. And then on the north end, you can see Seymour and Columbus are also mentioned, about 30 or 45 minutes away from you guys. So in the wide view, we've got that ongoing tornado warning. And we're also keeping an eye on the non-warned parts of the storm here. Now this had a warning on it when we first came on for gusts up to 70 miles an hour. We sort of talked to you about the fact that this was on the weaker edge of what we were watching. Now there's no ongoing warning, but there is still strong wind. That's the message today. Even outside of these thunderstorm warnings, strong wind is happening. That's capable of doing some damage. We're just starting to get those reports in now of what damage is being done. That's why you're not hearing us relay a lot of those, because folks are inside. They're being safe. They're taking good actions, making good choices. As we get more of those reports to come in, we'll pass those along to you so you know what these storms are capable of doing.
And the new warning that has been issued that goes north of Du Bois County. So I think this is important to note here that Lawrence County, the severe thunderstorm warning is for 60. I think we all know that at some point these storms are going to outpace the best fuel. And in that regard, we may start to scale back in the northern part of our area the higher end wind potential. But the warning's still for Orange County, the one that goes southward into Harrison County. Those are still potentially 70 to 80 mile per hour winds. Weather Service just expired the severe thunderstorm warning for Du Bois and Perry County. The Weather Service also expired Perry, Breckenridge, Grayson, and Hart County. We're getting reports now out of Du Bois County in Jasper that a large tree is down at St. Charles Street north of 13th. Also large trees down in Jasper, Klemper at 5th Street. So it does appear that Jasper took a hit, a pretty solid hit from these storms that are moving through. And that eastern line that you see, it seems that it's outpaced any fuel. Low fuel, doable. No fuel is a whole different animal here. Well, so these are things that we're seeing evolve.
And that tornado warning that's still showing on your screen, when the National Weather Service issued that, they specifically referenced the warm front. There's a warm front draped through our northern communities. It's in Indiana right now. If you're on the north side of that front, remember, a front is like a wall between two kinds of air. If you're on the north side, you're saying, what are these people talking about tornadoes? It's like 45 degrees. We know, we see you, we hear you. That warm front, though, can provide enough spin, enough of a lifting mechanism that it can initiate, it can be the spark that the storms need to tap into that low energy, not no energy, but the low energy that's there. So when the Weather Service issued that tornado warning, they said this is right along the warm front, which makes it even more concerning. Again, like Mark was just saying, we're starting to see that outpace the energy a little bit, starting to get on the other side of that warm front where it's losing the small amount of energy that it had to begin with. So that's what we're kind of watching evolve in real time here, is it's kind of crossing a boundary from yes, this is possible to no, we're really going to start to see a lot of this stuff weaken. But Mark, you were also mentioning that kind of eastern line. We're starting to see something tick up there around the Mount Washington and Bardstown communities. Talk to us about that.
There's going to be challenges as we deal with this. So what what we know is that the highest likelihood of you to get any strong to severe thunderstorms for areas east of I-65 and let's say south of the river are going to come from this main line. There is a slight uptick right now occurring near the Mount Washington area. There's no lightning right now, but we do know that there's tremendous wind energy. 3 minutes from now in the J-Town area, you're like, wait a minute, it's going to move that far? Yeah, these are going at 70 to 80 miles an hour. So it'll be in Middletown in 6 minutes, Crestwood 11, Eminence 26. Is there a warning on this? No, there's not. But could we get some 60+ mile an hour wind gusts? Absolutely. Remember one thing about this. The Weather Service had stated yesterday that if we did not get winds that exceeded 70 miles per hour, they would not warn it. So these storms here potentially can still produce 60 and may not get severe thunderstorm warnings. I think that's important to note here as we look. All of that said, are we seeing powerful winds here? Maybe approaching the Taylorsville area, but honestly, it doesn't look as intense as the line to the west, and that's just me just calling it like I see it. That said, the latest scan does show a little bit of an uptick here. 13 minutes from now in Olive Branch, 19 minutes from now in Shelbyville, and 28 minutes from now in the Eminence area. Hannah, you're seeing something?
Yeah, we've got the Bardstown camera pulled up here that I think is just a helpful reference when we're watching that area. So to the guys in the control room, that's on our Weather Picks computer, if we can pull that up. Also computer number 4. Here's a look at Bardstown. The first thing that should jump out out at you as the rain looks like it's going sideways. The flags are blowing. It's obviously raining. The clouds are pretty low. This is where we're starting to see the wind increase now. We were just showing you the inside of this storm where the wind's starting to pick up. So is the rain. This is a cell that's building right now. And this is what it looks like in real time. So this is not a storm we're drawing to your attention because it's actively producing a tornado or strong wind, but because this is developing right now. And Jude, you're keeping a really close eye on the stronger storms that are a little bit farther west. What are you seeing?
Yep, let's go out towards English, Indiana. Rotation forming rapidly right now.
Okay.
It's moving towards English, starting to get a sign that the winds are picking up. Something bad's going on here right now. This is close to where we have a tornado warning. This is close to where we've had a lot of spin, and then also north of Newton Stewart, another area of rotation. Two areas highlighted right there. These are going to be locations that have the most spin to tap into right now. I think you need to be in a safe place, no doubt about it. If you're anywhere out around portions of Du Bois County, as we look towards Crawford County, we're looking at both of these storms right now moving to the north-northeast at around 70 miles per hour. This is a couple miles, I'd say 5 to 8 miles north of I-64, moving towards English. And then also the southern tip of Orange County. This is developing rapidly right now. Strong rotation that is going to move in between French Lick and Paoli. Oh, wow. As you see this come onto the scene. This just popped up and is without a doubt the strongest. Let's see what the winds are actually doing inside. Sometimes you can get an accurate measurement. Sometimes it's not that accurate when it's that far off. But definitely two areas that need your attention 100% right now is you need to get underground if you have a safe place to go. You need to be surrounding yourself with as many walls as possible, as we have a possible tornado developing, tracking towards 145 and then also down towards English, in between Tazewell and English, some very strong rotation.
Yeah, and I want to call out Jude using some careful language there about a possible area developing, watching a storm really start to wrap in on itself. We're concerned. We're telling you what we're seeing on the radar right now. We're not going to stand here and say is or isn't it a tornado right now. We're saying that this is not safe, that it's time to be in your safe place now, regardless of semantics.
And I'm going to take it over to the analyst right now. To speak to what you're mentioning, remember we always say that green means go on normalized rotation. And Hannah, we're now seeing multiple areas where we've got that green. And on top of that, you will notice that this green triangle is in there. We call that a tornado vortex signature. It doesn't guarantee a touchdown. It really doesn't. But when we look at the data, we know that this is very close to the warm front, and it may indeed be hooking up with the warm front. Hannah, if we could, let's zoom that out just a pinch. So we've got these multiple areas of rotation along the line. One, let's zoom in on that particular one first. So this area of rotation right now, any towns around there or streets that we can call off on those, Hannah?
State Road 145, that
Okay.
kind of main north-south, right, cutting straight through the screen there.
Okay, and then let's move further south along this line so we can see where the other areas, and just there we go.
That looks like a new tornado warning.
Okay, so is that a new or is that an extension, Jude? The Weather Service, I've got that up on my computer on the left there. Did the Weather Service just give a continuation on that, a status?
It's a continuation. So they're going to keep this going until 2:45. They just cut out Perry County from the warning.
Okay. And power lines also down Highway 60. That's in Irvington, near Irvington. There's some rotation developing down around Brandenburg. You go on with the tornado warning right now.
Okay, good information, Jude. And you could see this basically encompasses these two areas of rotation. Think about this between French Lick and Chamberlain in Orange County. Think about this. As far as if we're seeing any debris, Hannah, I'm going to put my finger. What I'd like you to do is put a mark here on some of these locations. The reason we're going to do this is I want to make sure that this is not in an area of no rain. And these are crucial things. So it's definitely in an area of rain. Hannah, put that normalized rotation back on again one more time if you could. Okay, that's very conspicuous. That is, it's not saying there's a tornado, but there is a drop in our correlation coefficient over there. At minimum, at least, it's something that I think we need to inspect a little more. Hannah, I also want to see on this area down here, let's go with normalized rotation over there as well, which is in the southern part of Orange County. That's also somewhat close. And we also want to see, is that embedded in rain? And the answer is it is. I think that there could be two things that we're seeing here. I think what we could be seeing is the straight line winds blowing leaves off of trees, things like that. I think it's also possible that very quick spin-up tornadoes may be occurring in these areas. This is the important thing to note. These can occur super fast. Does it matter if a quick spin-up hits your house or 80-mile-an-hour straight-line winds? These are really important things to note. It does not matter. You prepare as though a tornado may be occurring in these areas. There are some signals that it could be, Hannah. This is not what we would call a guarantee. This is not a slam dunk. This is a we need to watch this real close.
Right, and Jude's pointing out an area that's even just a smidge south of here. So again, Mark mentioned a minute ago this kind of upside down triangle. Don't lean too heavily on that. They're going to always look a little off from where they should be. But that just is a way of the radar telling us it thinks that there's some spin going on. And Jude was keeping a close eye on that area. Again, just south of English, or excuse me, just north of English. He circled it for you there. Jude, what were you seeing here that jumped out to you?
So that rotation tightly wound, this is one of those that's not spread out. I mean, it's compact, it's there, it's easy to see. French Lick, West Baden, Paoli, Orangeville, this zone right here, and potentially this wind holding together moving up towards Lawrence County. It's on a beeline for locations like Orangeville, Mitchell, and Crawford within the next 10 to 15 minutes. And then I mentioned some power lines reported down around Irvington. We have a severe thunderstorm warning in and around Breckenridge County towards Meade County. But as we come down farther to the south, I want to show you also some high winds that are close to I-64 south of the Ohio River into north central Kentucky. Let's come down a little bit more. You can see where we do have, winds starting to gust out. A little bit of action that I wanted to show you. While we don't have tornado warnings right now, don't necessarily get caught up in the fact that, hey, there's no tornado warning. We have confirmation that there has been some wind damage as it's already moved through portions of this area. You can see a little thing there. That grabs your attention right there, heading towards New Amsterdam, New Middletown, and then over towards Brandenburg. There's 3 spots. So we're going to have all eyes on this while there is no tornado warning. You know how it happens. We just saw it occur up in Orange County, Indiana. Rotation, and then boom, tornado warning was issued.
And Jude, you can kind of see here, speaking to what you're talking about, I want to just show that velocity again. Look at that area of rotation coming up just south of French Lick right now. This specifically is along State Road 145. This is moving towards the northeast, right in Orange County along State Road 145. The greens and the reds are right next to each other. These are things that we need to watch. I don't think that I'm standing here saying conclusive that indeed a tornado would be touching down. Right, but it's close. It's close. These things are on the border of things that we really need to watch. And it extends even further. Jude, you're seeing an area of rotation that you've been watching near English as well. These are situations where the Weather Service is going to utilize a tool that we have in meteorology called the Severe Thunderstorm with Tornado Possible. This is exactly what these were invented for. We can get these quick spin-ups occurring, and they can occur within severe thunderstorm warnings. Sometimes I'm asked, Mark, I never went under a tornado warning and a tornado hit. Here's the thing. You have to understand that we are very clear on the fact that severe thunderstorms can and do produce tornadoes with low warning. And that's why we put out these severe with tornado possible tags. Also, there's areas of rotation on the other part of that line that's under a severe thunderstorm warning, northeast of Mockport and also Brandenburg. And it's worth noting, I just got this report in. There's several now. A tree on a house through the roof in Irvington. Again, let me say that. Tree on a house through a roof in Irvington. Power outage being reported in the Celestine area of Du Bois County. You're like, Mark, you mentioned that earlier. Exactly. Tar Hill in eastern Grayson County. Part of a neighbor's roof is gone. This being reported as well. And then we've got power outages continuing here in the Fordsville area. So we have numerous reports of damage from these thunderstorms as they've moved across our area.
If we can come back over to analyst, I want to give you guys kind of a perspective. We're going to take a live camera in French Lick, Indiana next to show you what this looks like. So as you take a look at the radar here, you can see the brightest colors have just passed French Lick. So now you're looking at a live stream from the area. and it just looks like rain, right? So the worst of it has moved beyond, but you can look at the rooftop here and see there's obviously like bird deterrent here on the rooftop. All of that's still in place. And as you take a look at the split screen, the heaviest rain has just passed the resort there. So we can see that the strongest wind, the heaviest rain has just moved on. This is what it looks like in the aftermath. And remember, this is not the end. The wind is really going to crank up once this line moves through. Jude and Mark are standing right next to me, pointing furiously at something. What are you guys looking at?
Well, the National Weather Service just expired the tornado warning for Crawford, Du Bois, and Orange County. So Crawford, Du Bois, and Orange County. I know people in Louisville are wondering, what does this mean? Guys, if we can, Hannah, let's get on the 800 building on TVM4. And I would like to, if we could, put that in the corner for us for Louisville. If we can two-box that, radar. Once Hannah gets the 800 building up on TVM4. Okay, so if we can box those, what I'd like to do is our main weather system with weather picks so that we can actually see what's occurring in Louisville as well. So what you will notice is the severe thunderstorm warnings, the storms are definitely less intense as we go towards Brandenburg and Corydon. And I just want to be completely transparent and forthcoming. Almost all of the data was showing that the line was going to weaken somewhat as it approached Louisville. Now, could that mean a broken line that produces some still damaging winds? Yeah, it absolutely can. But what I don't think it's going to do is produce a swath of damage as it comes across Louisville. I think that if we're to speak towards Louisville, I think the northern part of Louisville is where we would need to watch the most closely for damaging winds. So Georgetown 5 minutes from now, 9 minutes from now in the Borden area, and Louisville, again, I just want to be clear, the northern side of Louisville, 17 minutes from now is when, if there was some damaging winds, it would be moving back into your area. 23 minutes from now in St. Matthews. We do not have any tornado warnings as it stands right now. My belief here, for me, is as long as we have elevated severe thunderstorm warnings in the 70-mile-an-hour range, we're going to stay with them. If the time comes where we don't believe that any 70-plus, what we refer to as destructive winds can occur, we would return to programming, but I don't think we're there yet. Still watching an area of rotation near English. These severe thunderstorm warnings, remember, you can get tornadoes quickly to form, but English to around Ethel, we have got to watch this still for 70-mile-an-hour winds. This has a history of producing damage across our area. You can see the 800 building in Louisville. Louisville now goes under a severe thunderstorm warning. So Louisville, you are under a severe thunderstorm warning just issued right now. If you guys can, let's find out what the wind speeds are on the warning for Louisville. My guess is this includes the northern part of Jefferson County, and this will be coming in momentarily, but you can see, so there's the warning. This goes just for the western side of Jefferson County. This is for 70-mile-an-hour winds. Louisville, let's talk here for a second. 70-mile-an-hour winds. That's not just damaging winds on a regular run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm. 70-mile-an-hour winds are the kinds that do damage. They'll take trees down. They can damage your roof, damage the siding, blow furniture all over the place. These are potentially what we refer to as destructive winds. Now, I just want to note that where in Louisville would be included. This does not include like around Preston. It doesn't include Bardstown Road as we go outside of the Gene Snyder. It's not including, let's say, Fern Creek. It's not including Anchorage right now. But who is it including? Downtown Louisville, which we are going to be watching very closely. Downtown Louisville being included in this, the west end of Louisville, PRP, Shively, all included in this warning. It also will go through the airport, which should give us a really good sense of what the winds are. 5 minutes from now, it's in the PRP area. Borden, 6 minutes from now. So downtown Louisville, it's 14 minutes away. That puts the storm around 3 o'clock. My opinion here is if our school officials are thinking about, do I release at 3? Let me just give you my opinion. I don't make the decisions. I am very forthcoming with that. Let's not release. Let's allow the storms to go by and let's release afterwards. We do not want the kids out on the streets or walking to a bus or any of those things with 70-mile-an-hour winds coming through. Let's pause that. As we go towards southeast, we are watching in Orange County still some area of rotation that absolutely continues to be worth watching. It'll go between Rigo and around the Chambersburg area. but this still remains an active afternoon with multiple warnings, numerous reports of damage. We've got trees through homes. We have multiple power lines down. We have power outages. And look at all the damage reports here. And remember, the Weather Service Louisville right now, you're like, Mark, there's not many there. Right. Because they're dealing with the warnings right now, so they're not going to get those out as quickly. But here you go, 225 out of Du Bois County, report of a tree down and on a home. So there's a lot of damage reports that we're getting, Hannah.
We're starting to get more of those in. The emergency manager in Du Bois County is just on top of it always, and today is no exception. So he just shared with us that there's a report of 2 trees on a home in Jasper. In fact, there have been a couple of reports like that of trees that have come down that have done some damage in Jasper. He's going to be sending obviously more reports in the next few minutes. You can see how that rotation is approaching these warnings. I'm going to flip over to reflectivity and kind of zoom in on Louisville. And if we can get that 800 building camera back up, maybe a split screen there, it's ready to go because you can watch this storm
and
that's
Albany's
approaching
be valuable
Louisville.
too.
Yeah, we'll pull up New Albany next, but this camera in Louisville right now is pointed toward the west. So folks on the west end who are downtown, this is what your view looks like. You are watching the storm approach Louisville in real time. Jude's showing you right where that storm is on our analyst computer here. It's just fascinating to be able to pair a blob of color on radar and actually see what that looks like with your eyes, so you know how threatening this looks, how ominous these clouds look. There is a severe thunderstorm warning on this section of the storm right now for wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. Mark just put that in some context for you so you know how strong that is, what that's capable of doing, and now you can set your eyeballs on that storm. It's still a couple of minutes away from actually getting to this camera, so this is not the strongest part of the storm. You're kind of seeing the clouds that race out ahead of it. But look at how, speaking of clouds that are racing out ahead of it, just look at that camera. Look how fast those clouds are moving. That tells you just how strong the wind is above our heads in the atmosphere, and that's a huge part of what's feeding today's ongoing wind threat. So you're looking here at that storm approaching Louisville on the left-hand side on the radar, and the storm actually showing up on our camera in the 800 building. Now Mark is getting the New Albany camera turned around so we can take a little bit of a different look at it, but it's the same center of that storm. We also should be able to see a pretty good view in Corridon right now that's kind of in the middle of some of the heaviest rain.
And I've got, by the way, if you guys can take our weather pics here in that corner box, that'll give me a little bit of control on those cameras. But we've got the New Albany camera, and you can see looking west. Hannah, you can see the base on that storm and the rain shaft there. We'll also take a look at Corridon. And Corridon, you know, I mean, this is wind blowing sideways. You can see our cameras getting kind of shifted around on there. If you've ever seen the way our cameras are secured, they have huge sandbags on them so that they don't get blown over. But look at that rain blowing sideways out of Corridon. And that is with the strong to severe storms. That storm has a warning of 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it is worth noting the Weather Service put on that warning coming through northern Louisville, coming through Harrison County, coming through Floyd, coming through Clark, coming through Scott, and coming through Washington County of the tornado possible tag. I cannot emphasize this enough. You need to understand that severe thunderstorms can and do produce tornadoes quickly. We've got to watch near the Hardinsburg, Indiana area. Jude, you've had your eyes on that particular portion of the line, and you've been watching rotation developing from time to time. It still looks like a real area of concern.
Right, it's not as tight as it was when we had that tornado warning up in Orange County as we were closer over towards French Lick. Still some broad rotation, but green and red coming together, no doubt about it, right along Highway 150. You're talking about, at a minimum, some wind threats 60 to 75 miles per hour, whether it's spinning or not, yet to be determined. But this is gushing its way to the northeast. So next stop will be all in this area as we continue from Orange into Washington County, Lawrence into Jackson County. And this is the northern flank of these severe thunderstorms, which is closer to the actual low pressure. So it does make a little bit of sense that there's quite a bit of rotation popping every now and then, showing up where we have severe thunderstorm warnings, but these could very well turn into tornado warnings at any given point. We'll pull it back down, come farther down to the south and southwest, getting closer to Metro Louisville. There's still some wind around Corydon, Elizabeth, Indiana right now, Highway 111, River Road, right along the Ohio River. Strong winds developing and really starting to pulse with that new scan that just came in. That's the reason we have a severe thunderstorm warning. What we're looking at right now isn't the radar vantage point that you might be used to seeing. This is looking inside the thunderstorm, what the winds are doing. It picks up how the raindrops are moving around. So some of the stronger winds on the northern side. This is the border heading into Jefferson County. This is the Ohio River. So up and down Dixie Highway, we're going to be getting into these stronger winds. This is the most southern storm that we have right now. Along that line, this is the last one in terms of severe thunderstorm warnings as it goes all the way up towards Du Bois County, but they are arcing to the north and northeast. So we'll have to wait and see if it builds a little bit more, maybe a little bit farther down to the south towards Bullitt County. But right now, I'd say the northern 25% of Metro Louisville, including downtown Louisville to about Old Louisville, we have the greatest chance for some damaging wind. Let's go out a little bit wider so we can get everyone caught up. It's 2:53. Here's what's ongoing in terms of severe thunderstorms. Down around Radcliffe, starting to get a little new formation of some heavy rain pulsing up. Even without a warning, even without a lot of rain, the wind field right here ahead of this front will most likely pick up close to 50 and 55 miles per hour. But right now in Cordon, extending from Radcliffe up towards Cordon, jumping up and over the Ohio River, moving towards I-65, we don't have rain there just yet. Don't wait for that rain. As it moves at you at 70 to 75 miles per hour, we're going to get those gusty winds, limited amounts of lightning. Also, don't wait for that thunder as a cue that a thunderstorm is there. Since we are lacking instability, a lot of these storms are limited in the electricity field. So you just have very limited amounts of lightning, but a ton of wind energy as this moves now through Bedford and Mitchell, Medora, Brownstown, over into Washington County. Salem, your wind threat is really going to increase within the next 3 minutes.
And we've got on our camera from Louisville, we're looking at the updraft base on those storms that are northwest of Louisville. It has been interesting. It is a ragged updraft base, but this is the area, if you were to get any rotation out of, we would watch. Traditionally on something like this, we're going to be watching the right side here. So since you kind of have reference point, I'm going to zoom you in a little bit so I can show you the area that we would be watching. If there was to get a brief spin up, it would occur in this area. So you can see there is a tiny bit of a lowering here. And it's just fascinating to watch as you look at something like this. You can see the updraft base there, and you can see the subtle rotation that's occurring there. Now, a lot of times people will look at this and say funnel cloud, and it is conceivable that may actually be a small funnel there. We are watching. National Weather Service does have severe thunderstorm with tornado possible for the storms that are coming through around PRP, going through Lanesville, Georgetown, Greenville, Palmyra. We just got a report of 63-mile-an-hour winds out of the Brandenburg area. There are numerous reports of damage coming in from around our area, tree on a home in Du Bois County, and we have very strong winds coming through, especially western Louisville. It's worth mentioning Louisville. If you're thinking, okay, I may not in South Louisville, I'm in Fern Creek, I'm not going to get any severe thunderstorms. You may not. But you're still going to get the strong winds because once this line goes through, we will see temperatures start to surge a little. What that does is that basically opens up the elevator. It allows that 70-mile-an-hour wind aloft to transfer down to the ground. So in the 3 hours after this initial line passes, that's when we're watching for those strong gradient winds, which could still go 60, 65, 65 plus. Right. So I don't think that we look at this as the end of threat. I don't think that's the way we look at this.
Well, and it's not just that we saw 60. Can we get the 800 camera in here too? Because we're seeing that cell change a little bit instead of this camera. But it's not even just that, oh, 20 minutes ago we had 60-mile-per-hour gusts, or 2 hours ago when this all started we had 60. No, we're seeing that right now, up to 65. That 68-mile-per-hour gust that just came in from the Brandenburg area. This one's 60 knots in Bowling Green.
And I'm going to zoom the 800 out just a little bit so I can get a better shot on that.
So this is an ongoing wind threat. Mark's going to zoom the camera out so you can get some more perspective. But again, the camera you're looking at here is mounted on the 800 building in downtown Louisville. And what you don't see here is that lowered base that looks like it's spinning. Now here's a little inside baseball for you. When you are looking at clouds on a day like this where you're looking for rotation, look for smooth edges that descend out of the bottom of the cloud. A cloud that is rotating, a rotating wall cloud, looks smooth on the edges because it's spinning. If you look at the cloud that you're seeing here, there's a lot of jagged, there's a lot of little pieces just hanging around. So while we have seen this cloud lower, and it did look smooth about 5 or 10 minutes ago, which is why we paid so much attention to it, I would argue that we're seeing this look a little bit more jagged now. We're not seeing the same rotation happening inside of it. But remember, folks, we've been talking to you about this all afternoon, that this is going to pulse up and back down. We see something rotate, looks really tight for a couple of scans, and then it looks like it falls apart, but it doesn't disappear. And then a couple of scans later, it comes back up. So we're getting a lot of reports now coming in from the Bowling Green area now that the storm has sort of passed them by of damage coming in. Every icon that you see on your map here is some sort of damage or wind report. The wind shows up in that dark blue icon. The damage or even flooding also shows up in these icons here. You don't see a ton within our communities because the storms are still here. Stay in your safe place. These reports can wait. The damage will still be there when the storm passes by. It's not safe to go out and look for that in the moment. We did also just get a measured wind gust of 59 miles an hour in Hart County at their Mesonet station. So that's not an estimate. That's not somebody guesstimating what they felt. That's a measured. That's a measurement. So it's 59 miles an hour. That's a pretty strong wind gust.
And
that's
Bowling Green
above
came
severe.
in 65-ish,
Right.
67-ish.
With that 60 knot gust. So we're seeing the strong wind right now. The icons you're looking at here are damage reports as well. And so let's kind of give you the wide view. You're seeing the radar looped over the last couple of hours here, showing that track moving toward the northeast, this secondary line that's been the powerful one all day, still producing severe weather. Every orange box you see here is for a severe thunderstorm warning, where the wind is capable of producing gusts up to 70 miles an hour. Some of these have gone as high as alerting you for gusts over up to 80 miles an hour, I should say. That's elite level wind in a severe thunderstorm, and it's the reason we have stayed on with you all day. We don't like to hear ourselves talk. We get sick of it. But we have decided that this is a threat to you. That is why we are still here, and that threat is ongoing.
And you know, I would like to, if we can, take the our Schneck Medical from Seymour, because we're looking west at that severe thunderstorm that's approaching as well, and put that in a box as well, so you can see there is the lowered base on that. So understand what that would mean. That lower here as well. Rick came in, and Rick's job for a little while was making sure, Rick, that we could have a 4 o'clock newscast on.
We're all set.
We've got graphics, Phil. You know, when you see all of us together, hey, by the way, it's nice seeing you, Jude. I haven't seen you in a little while.
Been a long time.
Rick, I haven't seen you since yesterday, or Hannah. But you know, when you see all of us together, honestly, we do like to come together because we like each other, but normally it's because there is active weather ongoing in our area. And we've got these strong storms moving across the area right now. What I'm going to do is we're going to take a tour of what we have ongoing in our area. We're going to track each segment, and we're going to get a sense of where we stand. The severe thunderstorm warnings is where we're going to focus. So right now, let me just touch on this. Mount Washington, Fern Creek, that's about to move across your area. Mount Washington 4 minutes from now, Fern Creek about 8 minutes from now. Some rain will move through, some gusty winds. The severe thunderstorm portion of the line, that would include the northern side of Louisville. So this takes it into downtown in 2 minutes. Keep an eye, if we could, let's box me with the 800 building again, and that way you can watch that as the thunderstorm comes through downtown Louisville. 10 minutes from now in the Scottsburg area. It'll be in Prospect around 14 minutes from now. And then this is going to be for up to 70-mile-an-hour winds. I will note that the severe thunderstorm warning that includes the northern side of the metro includes the verbiage here of potential tornadoes. So you cannot rule that out. Hannah or Rick, if we could just get the 800 building camera looking due west if we could.
Yep.
And Hannah's on that right now. So the other portion of the line that's about to move into the Brownstown area, 5 minutes from now goes into Brownstown, 11 minutes from now goes into the Seymour area, 21 minutes from now in the Sand Creek area, and North Vernon about 20. If you guys now can put the 800 building behind me, I just want to show you guys what we're seeing here. Hannah has moved that camera westward, and you can see that rain shaft, that rain base on that thunderstorm that's approaching Louisville. As we look at that, so if you notice just very specifically here, notice how you can kind of see things really well, and then it gets a little bit more fuzzy. That's where the hardcore rain is, and you can see just on the western part of the shot right here, there is that hard rain falling. Now you're starting to see our 800 building camera shaking here a little. So the things that we would look for me as a scientist and meteorologist, I'm going to be looking specifically on that ground interface here where the cloud or rain reaches the ground. You can see the raindrops shooting by. And what I would be looking for, if you're going to get damage, you'll normally start to see power lines pop. So we would look for some of those flashes near the ground as this moves across our area. This is where having our network of cameras is unbeatable. It is really one of the things that we really helps us to really know exactly what's occurring now, because honestly, the reason we're on TV right now is we want you guys to understand in the now what exactly is occurring. We're going to go back now over to radar here and look at what we have going on across our area. In terms of the winds, there is still that little line that is now approaching basically New Albany. It's approaching 64 and I-265. And you can see these just little scattered pink areas all across the velocities, which are 60+ mph winds. And this is the reality. Is everybody going to see that? No. And once we get this to go by, I really want to also stamp one more time that the strongest winds would likely start to kick up. This is when, if we're to see gradient winds over 60, this is when they would be most likely to occur. But you can definitely see these scattered little areas. You know, the other thing that's of note, that right there, a little area of rotation that has developed just south and east of Lanesville. Let me just, guys, could you take me in a little bit closer on that area right here? That interests me. So there is definitely a small area rotation. Can you guys give me normalized rotation in this area just so we can verify what it's seeing? So it's just got these scattered areas of rotation in there. But again, this is just worth watching. Each one of these scans as these storms move across our area will be critical in determining that. Rick, you're now manning our analyst that we call it. Your job whenever we do severe weather, and by the way, if we could two-box here with the 800 building, because I really want to make sure we've got that. Two-box this with the 800 building for a little while. Rick, you're looking at this. You're looking for any debris. Are you seeing something that concerns you?
I'm not seeing anything that screams, we have a tornado on the ground, we have a problem. But there are definitely signs that we are getting some rotation within that. And with a day like this, all these storms, they are spinning. And when they spin, there is an enhanced risk for severe weather. So this is why we are on TV. Destructive winds. When I came in today, the rainfall was so intense, I felt like I was water skiing. So it's not just the opportunity for these severe storms, tornadoes possible, strong gradient winds, but also we still have some lingering flooding issues, and I don't want you to forget about that. Hopefully, you were just hanging out at the house, hunkered down, and not even thinking about going out right now because it's not worth the risk. But right now in Louisville, we have a severe thunderstorm warning, and we are watching some very powerful winds now hitting the city, and our tower cam is beginning to shake, rattle, and roll. And this is a sign that these storms are now moving in. So if you are in downtown Louisville, you need to be away from windows and in a safe place, especially not on the western side of your home or your apartment, because that's where these storms are moving in from. So again, just stay away from windows, get an interior room, and stay there until this goes through.
And there's an area of rotation that's approaching New Albany right now.
Well, and that's a tornado possible.
Yeah, I'm going to take us over to New Albany on our
I'm going to see if we have debris.
On our PICS camera, if we could just take PICS here briefly. So what we have on the New Albany camera, this is going to be crucial to watch here in the moments. There is an area of rotation that's approaching New Albany. It is not tornado warned right now, but as noted, you can get quick spin-ups very quickly. So we're going to need to watch this really closely. Moments ago, where we're viewing, just so you have a reference point, is we're looking basically towards the Sherman Minton, and you can't see it. You can see on the ground there, if you look at the sheets of rain that are blowing. Wow, watch off the side of this building here. You definitely get a sense of how strong these winds are. Look at that just coming off there, that shield coming off the roof of that.
Look at how that tree's moving in the back.
Yeah, we've got to watch New Albany right now. Obviously, at minimum, we're looking. Can we take that full, guys? New Albany full now. This is definitely at least some 60-mile-per-hour winds. That hopefully would be all. Again, if we could take the New Albany camera full, hopefully that's all. But there is an area of rotation that is very close to this area that we are watching. Interestingly enough, Jude, and we've said this before, this is another one that's anticyclonic or rotating in the wrong direction.
Right, rotating clockwise, which is a little bit bizarro, but it happens. Sometimes it's about 1 out of 1,000 is what the National Weather Service says in terms of getting a anticyclonic rotating potential tornadic cell. But regardless, damaging wind threat right now on the Ohio River, crossing from New Albany toward downtown Louisville, moving up through Floyd and Clark County as we watch this move up towards Sellersburg, really from mile marker 9 right into downtown Jeffersonville to New Albany into downtown Louisville.
Middle right.
Yeah, rain shaft. of
The
dose
sheets
of
of
heavier
rain.
rain. Yeah, that's where you can see the
Look,
the
it's moving
intensity
different
pickup.
speed as the cloud base there as well. So there's definitely those strong winds here. And it's just intriguing to watch this stuff. I'm going to head over to the wall real quick just so I can show you guys what we're watching here. If we can keep the New Albany camera up, that one we're watching because we have an area rotation. And if we could key me over this if you guys can, because I just want to show an area that we're watching. So this is moving into New Albany right now. It is basically going to head through the eastern side of New Albany, and you can see the sheets underneath this. This is the updraft base of the storm. For us, we've got to watch these particular areas, but you can see the rain underneath here is moving faster than the actual cloud base. So what happens here is the wind from aloft gets pushed down to the ground and then spreads out rapidly ahead of that. That's how you get the damaging winds here. But Rick, I assume, or whoever, let's just continue to pan just because I'm curious what we've got along this thing. Obviously, it is always very, very important when you've got eyes on what's occurring. There is nothing that is more valuable here. So here would be the heavy rain area right here, and then we move back into that rain-free base. I don't see something underneath that to me that screams tornado at this point right now, but we've got to obviously watch this really, really closely. Jude, you've been really eyeballing the rotation on that. How does it stand versus last time I spoke with you?
I would say it's moved on the river in between New Albany and Jeffersonville. The strongest winds now starting to move just to the east of New Albany. As we look really into downtown Louisville, it's straddling the Ohio River. As we saw those live cameras show the rain blowing down, blowing sideways, this is going to be the cell that really has the best chance of producing some of those winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour. And the weird thing is, there's also in and around New Albany on the other side of that heavy rain and strong wind, now starting to see the clouds break up a little bit, more sunshine, and we are not finished. As these lines of thunderstorms move off to the northeast, behind it, even though the rain will let up, gusty winds on and off 50 to 60 miles per hour will be a likelihood. Let's check in with some of the latest wind gusts. Hardinsburg, 53 miles per hour. Munfordville, 52 miles per hour. Bowling Green, there is no thunderstorm in Bowling Green right now, but you're looking at a wind gust near hurricane force at 68 miles per hour. This is blowing in on the backside of this record-setting low pressure that is shattering the all-time lowest pressure readings as it moves from Evansville up towards central Indiana, Columbus and Bloomington and Indianapolis. Those strong winds coming in without rain and storms will be gusting 60 to 70 miles per hour.
Can we go back to Rick's view of radar? Oh, no, this is a good point. I'm glad you hit this first. The Weather Service starting to trim counties out of this tornado watch. That's what you're looking at here. The yellow shading is the tornado watch that's been in effect for most of our area for most of the day. At this point, it only affects Grayson County so far, being cut out of this watch. But I just want to speak to the fact that the Weather Service is being really proactive here and saying, hey, when the threat of tornadoes is over, we will let you know very promptly. So Grayson County, you've been dropped from that tornado watch. The rest of you, this continues until 5 p.m. Remember, tornado watch meaning the conditions are here, the ingredients exist, not necessarily that there's an active tornado on the ground. So now, Rick, I'm going to come back over to you on the analyst computer. Talk us through what you've been looking at here. You've been kind of flipping back and forth, watching this area that we were highlighting around New Albany. Now it's moving into Jeffersonville, Clarksville. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I'm always looking at different layers of the atmosphere and different products. So we have reflectivity, what you're seeing right now, and this is what we always show you when it comes to radar. And I'm going to go over to base velocity, and what this does, it takes away all the clutter and simply only shows the winds. And when you see those brighter colors show up, it is a sign that we have some powerful winds in excess of 60, and perhaps even some locations localized where winds will go over 70 miles per hour. When you get to 70, that is the threshold where winds become destructive. So we have a new wind gust, and this is coming from the Mesonet. Let's see, 75 miles per hour in Hardinsburg.
And that was at 225 Eastern, 125 Central. So that occurred about 40 minutes ago. Wind gusts of 75 miles an hour.
Hurricane force.
Right, hurricane force winds.
And that was measured. That was not an estimate. That was picked up by a Mesonet station. That's a measurement. It's not an estimate.
Exactly.
So that's worth noticing.
And we're getting reports of damage here. Fort Knox EMS is reporting trees down right now. I've got pictures there. We're getting just reports from all over the area. You know, the one thing I think that really is important to note is that schools release around this time. You know, specifically, let me just speak to Seymour. I want to speak towards Salem. I want to speak towards Charlestown. We just need to be thinking about do we wait on this? We've got some strong winds here in Louisville that are near the Spring Mill area. So this one is going to be basically just north of the Gene Snyder near the Preston Highway area. So this is an area where we're seeing potentially some stronger winds than maybe 50 plus.
Mark, these are 72 knots.
72 knots showing up in Louisville.
Yep. Those are the gates. Right to the west is Spring Mill, and this is going
heading
northeast.
right towards Fern Creek.
And Hollow Creek as well, correct.
Okay, so no warning on this area right now, but we are seeing potential for some 60 to 70 plus mile-an-hour winds right now that are approaching Fern Creek. So Fern Creek, you gotta be careful. Warning or not, we're seeing these what we call gates on radar, and there is a storm in that area. So it is very reasonable for one to believe that that could actually be occurring. And so this is going to be in J-Town, and within the next 2 minutes, it's going to be Crestwood momentarily, 9 minutes from now. LaGrange, it'll be around 17 minutes from now, 22 in the Terrason area, Bedford around 25 minutes from now, but not warned in the southern part of Jefferson County. That said, we're still watching that area as radar is indicating that there are damaging winds approaching Fern Creek. This is a tough one. This is a tough one not just for us, a tough one for the Weather Service as well, because there is hellacious, ferocious winds in the atmosphere, and you just get one little storm that can transport them down to the ground, and it can happen very, very quickly. That's the reality here, Jude. You're dealing with a really hostile atmosphere with a lot of wind power in there. The fuel is not much, but it doesn't take much in this situation.
And I'm hoping the newsroom's listening right now, because Darby Bean, journalist who works here at WDRB, she was taking shelter earlier in Hardinsburg at the courthouse when the storms were moving in. Just checking to see if anyone has actually gotten in touch with her about potential damage down there, where we did have official measurement of 75-mile-per-hour winds. Would love to catch up with her and find out exactly what's going on in Breckinridge County.
So the camera that you're seeing here in the bottom right, to give you some context, that's the Snyder at Smyrna. Okay, that's what you're looking at here. Now, Mark, what's that report you just got in?
So just got a power outage being reported in the Beulah Church Road exit. So, you know, we're generally in this area here along the Gene Snyder, where we're seeing some of these stronger winds. You know, I think that it's always important. What we do, we analyze severe weather. We analyze thunderstorms that are occurring and what we see. There may be these pockets, Jude, we see this kind of frequently, where you get pockets of sprinkled really strong winds, and maybe not everybody sees them. But the area that gets those pockets of 60s, obviously that damage is significant to them.
And while there might not be a severe thunderstorm warning, another reminder that the National Weather Service made it clear yesterday, if you were under a high wind warning, and it looked like the winds would stay under 70 miles per hour, they would not issue a severe thunderstorm warning, because it was taken for granted that the winds would be near 60, 65 miles per hour. In a lot of these thunderstorms, rain showers, and even in locations where the sun is shining. So don't get caught up if you have a warning or if you don't have a warning. We're now getting into the mode of this storm system where the winds will increase whether it's sunny or storming outside.
And look at that Hardinsburg wind gust. I mean, the Hardinsburg wind gust right now is showing a 56. It is not storming there anymore. And the 68 that just occurred in Bowling Green. Rick, you're watching that storm. I'm going to come over to you on 3D.
Okay.
You're concerned about what we're seeing now in Jeffersonville.
The same signature that we saw just to the west of Fern Creek, another one has now popped up in Jeffersonville. So if you live in Jeff, you need to be away from windows. This looks like, per radar, some wind gusts which could be in excess of 70, 75 miles an hour. Gates right now sitting around 72. So this could be even close to 80.
What height are we at there, Rick? I assume we're about 1,200 feet, 800 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood?
1,300 feet.
Okay, 1,200 feet. So the reason that we always ask this is we need to know the height at which everything is occurring. So we're seeing right now a 70-knot wind on radar, which is approximately 78 miles an hour. That's about 1,200 feet above the ground in Jeffersonville. We may not get all that down to the ground, but I think we're going to get some 60s out of that. And remember what you just said. If you're in Utica, think about it. Whether you're under a severe thunderstorm warning or not, the Weather Service explicitly stated that areas under a high wind warning would not get a severe thunderstorm warning if the winds are 60. And I think we're seeing winds sprinkled 60 from now, Jeffersonville approaching Prospect, Goshen, Utica approaching the eastern side of Louisville, which would be areas like St. Matthews, Middletown right now. All of these areas, there are a number of areas that we're watching for these strong winds on a low pressure that now has been verified as the lowest or most intense storm ever to pass Terre Haute, to pass Evansville, and to pass Paducah. So this is significant stuff that we're seeing. The good news here, we don't have any warnings right now. This is at 5, the tornado watch is until 5 p.m. We're sitting at 3:18. I'll tell you what we're going to do here. Because these storms are continuing to affect the metro area, number one, number two, at a time when schools are going to be releasing, I think that we're going to stay with this probably until 3:30, approximately 3:30. So want to let production know that's the thought right now, is we're going to stay with this probably for another 12 minutes or so. I just would like to get this out of our area while we still have kids that are going to be potentially getting out of school. Jude, you've got an area that you're watching that looks like Indiana 3 just north of Charlestown.
Yep, and this will feed all the way down to the river, Utica to Charlestown. Rotating winds, straight line winds, 60 to potentially 70 miles per hour. This is one of the greatest concerns that we're finding right now. This is going to straddle the Ohio River
800 building up, by the way, guys.
Stay just on the north side of the Ohio River. Again, motion are taking these storms to the northeast. See what? Ooh, yeah.
You see that there? You can see that lowering.
Wow.
Let's take that full if we could, guys. This is exactly where Jude is talking about. Jude, there's the lowering on that. That you're noting a little bit of rotation near the Charlestown area. Let's keep that full. We need to watch that closely. Jude, explain that. So on the right, you've got the rain shaft there. What is that menacing little area that's a little bit lowered center screen right now?
It does look like somewhat of a wall cloud that's down pretty low to the ground. I mean, you're talking estimating 500 to 1,000 feet off the ground. It is low, and when you match that up with the radar, exactly what you're looking at, just on the north side of the Ohio River up towards Charlestown, that is spinning. There's at least some rotation. We don't know exactly how strong it is, but that's how some tornadoes can be formed. And this is what we're going to be watching. There's no doubt about it. This is the head honcho right now of all the thunderstorms and of all the scattered rain showers with that wind threat. This is the one we're watching most carefully. As the rotation does show up, it's a little bit scattered. Now we have it zoomed in. On the front side, as you go to the right side of your screen, that is a downpour. That's your rain shaft coming down. Also right in the middle, a couple pronounced rain shafts. And then when you get towards the center and left side, the rain lets up. But certainly looking at some strong winds and absolutely the potential of winds 60 to 70 miles per hour right in Charleston right now.
The whole thing is rotating along that portion of the line. There are these brief embedded areas of rotation, and the problem in a scenario like this is in a matter of 2-3 minutes you can go from having a lowering to even getting a quick spin up. So this has got to be watched really closely, and you can see live the left edge there. You can see how it's trying to lower just a little bit more. So this is definitely an updraft base at minimum that we're watching now moving through southern Indiana. This is very close to the Ohio River. It looks just a pinch north, but we also have some small areas of rotation now showing up near Anchorage and in Worthington and northeast Louisville. A lot to watch here still this afternoon and evening.
Can't even track these things right. You have to zoom out so much.
I know. And what Jude's alluding to is that when we storm track, we need to be able to pull it out to the correct speed. The correct speed on these is about 80 miles an hour. And you'll watch as Jude starts to draw that track gives us speed. And since we're trying to really pinpoint these areas, as Jude noted, you have to zoom out so far because they're going so fast to even get a track on there. So Jude, it's in the Worthington Hills area right now. Rick, you're looking at that on 3D. Can you tell me, do you see any area of of debris that would bother you?
I am not seeing
And I'm going to come over to your computer.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is start with reflectivity, just so we can kind of give you a baseline here. And obviously that line from Otisco through Charlestown means business. So I'm going back over to velocity. And when you see those orange colors, that's indicative up aloft of some winds to 80, and some of that may get dragged down to the surface. So at the bare minimum, winds of 60, perhaps some winds around 70 miles an hour as this crosses right over State Road 3, and this is continued tracking north and east. So this is moving right sandwiched between Charlestown, Otisco, and if this stays on track, areas like New Washington next in line. And again, the wind is going to be the biggest problem with this. We're actually starting to get some lightning strikes within that particular cell, and that is a sign that this may hold intensity or even come up a couple of notches. So right now, keeping a very close eye on those of you between Charlestown and Otisco. Like also Jude said, the whole thing is just rotating. So that's why we have to watch this with each and every scan like a hawk. Definitely some strong winds with this one in terms of rotation. The whole thing is spinning. But right now, what I'm not seeing is any signs of damage being done in the correlation coefficient. That's good.
And let's take 800 building, and I'm going to go to that at the weather wall here. Hannah, if you could, just let's stay with this storm on the 800. I want to show you what we have here live from our camera as we look towards around the Goshen area, towards Prospect, all of these areas. So downtown off the 800 building, you can see this is your updraft base in the storm. And so, you know, you may know, you may not, I storm chased for a really long time. I've been storm chasing since 1996. So if I was out here right now, what would I note on this? And you watch on our camera and you can see that there is debris flying by at times. So this here is going to be what we refer to as an inflow or a beaver tail inflow on this. And then this would be the wall cloud. Now normally if I was concerned about this immediate dropping a tornado, what you start to see is this starts to take on a bell shape at the bottom of this. If in this particular case we were to get a tornado, we would be watching right in the middle here. But this gives us, like I've said over and over, there's nothing more valuable than having eyes on the storm. What are we seeing out there? It's the reason that I am a storm chaser. It's the reason that I go to chase tornadoes. I go to chase hurricanes at times. There is nothing better than ground truth, and our cameras are giving us a ground truth. The other thing, guys, look at the bottom here. You can definitely see some of that wind blowing around and even kicking up some dust here in our 800 camera, moving at times. Starting to see maybe even some corkscrew a little on this. Regardless, it is fascinating to see this. At this point right now, I do not see a signal on there that shows a tornado touchdown. You guys are looking at it from the radar perspective. Are you guys seeing something that would speak to that? Jude?
Just entering into Oldham County, if we go back to StormView HD radar.
Okay, no.
Outside.
Okay, so just want to briefly say we're checking for debris there. We do not see any, but back to what you were saying, Jude. I apologize for the interruption.
That's okay. Prospect, Goshen, entering into Oldham County near I-71, coming out of Jefferson County. Not necessarily saying there's a tornado ongoing right now, but a wind signature right on top of River Bluff, 42. And then there's I-71 as we head up towards Buckner, Pee Wee Valley. These are areas of strong winds. These are areas where it's actually starting to rain heavily, and that enhances some of the wind. It can pull down those strong winds aloft down to the surface. So as we split these and move them off to the northeast, Oldham County, along the Ohio River, and then we're still watching that cell that was in Charlestown. We showed you that live cam from our 800 building. That's working up towards New Washington. So right now, looking at far eastern Jefferson County, entering into Oldham County, and then this is going to haul its way, essentially hop in a car and go right up I-71. Madison, Indiana, Jefferson County, Indiana will be in the path of some destructive winds potentially in that 60 to 65 mile per hour range. While these are not textbook signature tornadic cells that we're finding, there's lowering of the clouds. There's some spin in the atmosphere. You just never know. The one thing that is saving us right now from multiple tornadoes touching down is the lack of instability. The fact that the temperatures are straddling around 60 degrees. It's not 75. We didn't have hours of sunshine because there is so much wind that wants to corkscrew its way into that low pressure. This thing, I mean, if it was a normal day, you would almost laugh at this line. You would look at this and be like, we're not going to do on-air coverage with this. A couple lightning strikes. What are we going to have? A quick downpour, winds of 35 miles per hour. But this is not your typical day because this little thing right here has the history of producing winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. And then also not forgetting that even if it's not raining, as this moves on by, you might have partly cloudy conditions. Those strong winds, because of that low pressure, will be on and off, buffering us through 5, 6, 7 o'clock this evening.
And there's, you know, one thing Jude mentioned earlier, and Hannah, you can kind of speak to this as well. We look for these upticks in lightning strikes. When we see an uptick in lightning strike, that means the air is rising a little bit quicker. So these are areas, Hannah, that we're going to watch a little bit more closely. And we've got a couple of those lightning strikes increasing on some of these kinks in that line.
Right, so you're looking here at Lexington, Indiana. This is New Washington. Rick just put a track on this for you. We're concerned here about strong wind and the fact that this is developing energy, that we're seeing more of these lightning strikes show up. So if you're in the Madison area, again, We're talking about Indiana at this point. 10 minutes away from you. The Milton community is 15 minutes away. Strong wind here is the main concern. And I just want to emphasize again something Jude shared with you earlier, that because you are included in the high wind warning, you're not necessarily going to get a severe thunderstorm warning when the threat is wind. You should already be aware that that's the threat. That's the mentality of the Weather Service as they're issuing and not issuing warnings today. You should already be aware that wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour are likely for you, and that's what's happening inside of this storm. So don't kind of be blasé about it because you're not under a severe thunderstorm warning. We don't expect you to be, and the wind is strong enough to earn one on a normal day. So the New Washington area, you're seeing that bright red interrupting the kind of shade of pink there, and right next to it is orange. That's where we're seeing some of the strongest wind gusts there. Rick's drawing an arrow so you can point that out. That's where we're seeing potentially gusts 60, even above that. That's an area that's concerning, and it's not inside of a severe thunderstorm warning. Again, please do not let that be the thing that makes decisions for you today. You are already under a high wind warning. Anytime we say the word warning, it should change the actions you're taking today. This is no exception. High wind will be a threat for you, not just in this moment as the storm is on top of you, but over the next several hours as we watch the gradient wind pick up behind these storms. So now you're looking at that line, heavy rain, strong wind, and that uptick in lightning, showing us that that storm is energizing. It's not dying. It's not weakening. As it crosses the Ohio, it's picking up energy. It's picking up steam. This is something we're going to watch to make sure it doesn't try to rotate, that the wind speed doesn't increase. But Mark, this is a place that has my attention right now.
Yeah, and you know, the thing I think that we have to really emphasize and stamp, and you kind of touched on this, is the Weather Service is not going to issue for 60s today. They have said that the high wind warning will cover that. And so I think that it is fair to say that we may be getting 60s in here. You know, the reality is, Hannah, I think we'll probably discuss this after the fact as a group, what we refer to as the weather enterprise, and determine what did we do well, what did we not do well. And I would be very curious for you as the public, do you feel if we have a high wind warning for you and a severe thunderstorm moves through, do you think that a warning should be issued for you if it's a normal severe thunderstorm criterion? We're easy to find on social media. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. It's just Mark Weinberg. And remember, it's Mark with a C. But these are things that we need to know. We're going to continue to assess how we do things and the effectiveness of the method in which we do things. And in this particular situation, it was determined prior that we would not issue for our traditional severe thunderstorm warnings in the high wind warning area at 60. By the way, Lexington Bluegrass just hit a 69-mile-per-hour wind gust. Breckenridge Lane near Bardstown Road, just getting a report of a tree that is blown over. You know, this is one of these things. I hope that when today comes to an end, people will kind of look back on this one and understand what we were talking about in terms of high wind potential, in terms of power outages. We now have in Jefferson County, in Louisville, 5,100 without power. I believe that now exceeds what we had on Monday, where I think we peaked at around 3,900 without power. So 5,100 without power in Jefferson County. Meade County showing 1,130. This is per LG&E, and a big thanks to Rod, who got us that information. And Duke from Clark and Floyd at 1,100 without power. You guys understand this. Fort Knox, I saw that full tree down. You know, you guys understand this as a group of 4 meteorologists here. When we deal with these situations and we cover, there's a group of us that are on TV that are trying to get you guys the information that's going on, but there is an army behind the scene of camera people, of production people, of our producers, our executive producers, our news directors, and everybody that cares deeply about this community that they live in and are trying to get you information. So the biggest area of outages here in Louisville, and again, this is a big thanks to Rod showing this. This is near the Springhurst area. Jude, this is an area that we watched. You were looking at Springhurst in the northeast side of Louisville and eastern side of Louisville, where we could have some really strong winds, and it looks like, okay, excuse me, this is near the, Spring Mill. So this is near the Highview area. So this is between the the Gene Snyder and the Waterston Expressway between Bardstown and 65. This is an area that Rick DeLuca picked up on. Rick, you noted this area, and now we have power outages there. This is why real-time analysis like what you're doing, Rick, makes a difference. Keep an eyeball on that. Rod, thank you for that. Let us know if those numbers change. But Hannah, this is an area we watched. We were specifically honing in on this area. These power outages show us no severe thunderstorm warning. I'm not going to blame the Weather Service. They said that we're going to do this. but we're getting damage underneath these. And this is part of the reason why we stay with this for a little while. Jude, you're even seeing some areas of rotation still?
This is in Oldham County in between Park Lake as you go into Crestwood right now. Definitely a sign that there could be winds in that 60-mile-per-hour range. Just something that's popped up, still holding in that area of heavy rain. Let's do a quick loop. I mean, let's get everyone caught up. While we don't have severe thunderstorm warnings, locally, they're all now over towards Lexington, Richmond, Kentucky. Locally from Madison down towards Bardstown, you'll see this front moving on in, and that's where those winds are starting to pick up. I want to show you how fast they're moving. These are moving more than a mile a minute. And it's not like you have to sit here and wait inside your house all day for these things to get by. Once they pass on through, the risk for thunderstorms will be leaving. We still have the strong wind potential even behind it with some scattered showers, winds that will be in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range. But at least the lightning threat will be leaving. The potential for any quick spin-ups in terms of tornadoes would be leaving the area within the next 30 to 60 minutes. But this is what we're looking at right now at 3:34 on this Friday afternoon. I know we're getting ready for WDRB News to come on at 4 o'clock. We'll have the whole team and get everyone caught up.
Wait a minute, we've got news coming on at 4?
We have news. We have journalists that are out in the field getting live reports and checking out some damage. Right now in Madison, it's about to get pretty hairy. Lightning, and that's that location that was in New Washington with some weak rotation a little while ago, heading up towards Madison and then pushing out of Oldham County towards Henry County. Be advised, winds gusting 60 to 65 miles per hour up around Sligo and Campbellsburg, mile marker 33 to 37, and eventually right up into Carrollton. We're going to have that damaging wind threat come in fast.
And let's go to Hannah. Hannah, what I want to do here is let's look at what's going on across our area. Let's go with a track and let's go through all of these storms because, you know, I think that it's important to note there are still a number of communities being impacted by these thunderstorms before we will now turn over to the gradient wind concern.
Exactly. So we're wrapping up, not that it's over, but we're transitioning from the end of the thunderstorm threat into what we've called all day a gradient wind, just meaning strong wind without thunderstorms, something we've been talking to you about for days. I also want to remind you, you're seeing it scroll at the bottom of your screen here. We actually had a new tornado watch in the midst of all of this that was issued. It includes Carroll County. So Carroll County, you were not included in the initial tornado watch for our area. Now you're included in this one. The tornado watch here shaded in yellow. Only in Carroll County this goes until 7. Everyone else it's valid until 5, but I suspect that the Weather Service is going to take a look at this once these storms get out of our area and have a chance to really cut down some of these watch areas. So let's zoom in and take a look at what we're seeing here from North Vernon down toward Madison along the river. Heavy rain and strong wind. I can't emphasize enough, saying strong wind just sounds bland, but today it matters and it means a lot. We've got strong wind, heavy rain, and we've even seen a little bit more energy here. A couple of those lightning bolts showing up, especially as you get closer to Madison, Indiana. You see that right down here. So in terms of when will the strongest wind, the heaviest rain be at my house, and we're talking about gusts up to 60 miles an hour here, you're not going to get a warning, and that is strong enough to do damage. We've seen both of those things be true in the last half hour from these exact storms. So Madison, we've called you out a couple of times. This is on top of you, and that this is going to continue moving northeast out of our communities. So zooming in even a little bit closer, Smyrna, you can see down toward the Republican area. That's where we have a couple of these lightning bolts showing up. A little bit more energy developing there as we go south closer to the river. Brighter colors, heavier rain. That's also where we've seen the more intense wind. We were talking about New Washington a few minutes ago. It's moving out of that area. You can see generally headed toward Campbellsburg. Heavier rain and gusts up to 60 miles an hour. Then there's a break in the line. Now you're looking at the southern edge of this. Again, just a couple of minutes away from Shelbyville. That's going to be the stronger wind. Gusts, I would say, in this area probably 50 to 60 miles an hour, maybe even a little bit less. Strong wind there as well. Frankfort, this is headed toward you, probably closer to 15 or 20 minutes. But remember, Jude just said it, these are moving faster than a mile a minute. They are racing to the east and northeast as all of this moves in ahead of a low pressure. You can see how it kind of spirals a little bit around itself. Once this line of storms moves out of our area, we introduce that low pressure. That's where we see those gradient winds really start to pick up. The strongest wind we have seen all day today is wrapping around this big red L. This is where Madisonville showed us gusts over 60 miles an hour outside of thunderstorms because of this big red L, this low pressure center. So this is where we're going to see some strong wind for the next several hours. And again, you're not going to get a severe thunderstorm warning for that because there are no thunderstorms at that point. Please be aware, folks, we are still expecting wind just as strong for the next several hours as the gradient wind sort of wraps around this low pressure center. Rick?
And we've got damage and we've got power outages being reported. Rick, we've watched in Louisville, 5,100 without power here. Meade County, 1,130 without power. Duke is showing that Clark and Floyd at 1,100 without power. And just to note, the Jefferson and Meade would be at LG&E. And you're getting some reports in from some of our emergency managers and some that are out there. What kind of damage are we hearing?
All right, so we have to give a shout out to Mike out of Harrison County. He's the emergency manager director there. And this is some of the information that he just passed along. Numerous trees and utility lines are down around the county, so he's just saying, advising, please stay at home. There's a utility pole and lines down on Walnut Street, which is right near Albany Street in downtown Cordon. The low water slab bridge in downtown Cordon is closed from high water. Parts of Poplar Street also closed from high water as well. We've already seen some water rescue today. We don't want to see that happen again, so please avoid those areas. And in terms of roads that are closed because of impassable high water, Rocky Hollow and also New Middleton Road near Turley Road is also closed.
Okay, and we're now getting reports out of Oldham County, an area that we've been watching very closely, of a funnel cloud. National Weather Service responded in what was severe thunderstorm warning. I'm just going to put the tag on there if you could.
Yeah, tornado possible.
Okay, so they are going tornado possible on this. So this would be for Henry, Oldham, Shelby, and Trimble County until 4 p.m. Just to let our production crew know, now that we're pushing these warnings into the 4 o'clock time frame, we're going to take this into the newscast here. So we probably will not return back to programming. We'll jump into the news and move forward from that point as when that time comes. And you'll see all of us, again, I mentioned that this is an army at WDRB of producers, of reporters, of camera, of people that are out there that are helping us get information as we get new things coming in. Duke reporting 1,413 without power right now, and Floyd 592 without power. Jude, our latest severe thunderstorm warning puts that storm in the Campbellsburg area 4 minutes from now, 9 minutes from now in Carrollton, and 17 in VV. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to step over to the wall, and I'd like to just look inside this storm. I really want to see what we're viewing in terms of rotation. So if you're wondering, why did the Weather Service issue a warning on this? And I assume, Hannah, 60-mile-an-hour winds on this one, or is it stronger?
70.
Okay, so the Weather Service went with the warning here for 2 reasons. Because we've now exceeded that 60-mile-an-hour wind. We've gone to 70. 70 is what they said they would issue on. So we have 2 reasons. The 70-mile-an-hour winds and some rotation near the LaGrange area. And you've just got a new update there. Maybe an area of rotation here near the Sligo area. Could we just zoom that out and take me a little bit closer to that area? That may be an area of rotation. Can we give me normalized rotation on there? It's just so I could take a look. This would be near the Sligo area. And also, so basically you're talking about just north of 71 in Henry County here near the Pendleton exit. Maybe. I don't think I see anything right now. And also as we look at the correlation coefficient, remember what this is saying. It's telling me, are the particles the same size? Who cares? Well, here's why you should. Have you ever been outside when it's raining? Yeah, I have. The drops are all the same size, right? We all know that. That's simple. Well, why would it then show that there's different size particles if it's just raining? If there's a tornado doing damage, it's going to be lifting up your shingles, leaves, trees. That's why that becomes so important. It's really important on that. And we always look at this correlation coefficient. If you ever look at my weather team, you'll notice that we're spread along multiple computers. And the person that is standing on the far right on every single time you see us, that person's job is solely to be looking for debris from storms. You know, it may seem like sometimes that what we do in these severe weather coverage is something that, you know, we're just kind of talking. We have, in my team at least, we very, very clearly define roles as we go into these, and we all know what we need to be doing as the storms are occurring. And for me, I will tell you, the #1 thing to do for us is that we want to tell you as soon as possible if there's a tornado doing damage. It's almost on my team like everybody is really, really always looking, and we're always have our eye on that debris. Even if we don't think it could be occurring, we're always looking for it. So the severe thunderstorm warning is for Henry, Oldham, Shelby, Trimble County. As I noted, I don't see anything right now that screams that a tornado could be occurring, and it makes sense the reason the Weather Service is going with a severe thunderstorm with tornado possible. But let's do a track on this one. These things are cooking, as Jude mentioned. In fact, we're going to be probably getting these out of our area as we hit the 4 o'clock newscast. But interestingly enough, once we hit the 4 o'clock newscast, we then start to talk about the strong winds, which are near 60 miles an hour behind there. And we've got some new information here. They were trying to get my attention. I was looking in the wrong direction. Hannah, you've got my attention now.
Well, good. I'm so glad. We just had a wind gust reported at Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport of 62 knots. Folks, that's over 70 miles an hour.
That is it. That is what we promised yesterday. The data showed this, Hannah. You and I were looking at it. I know, I get a little excited. But remember, Hannah, when we looked at that sounding, I said 67 knots, 71 knots. This is exactly what the sounding showed yesterday. This is why we said we would see potentially over 70-mile-an-hour winds in Louisville. And Hannah, not with a thunderstorm.
Does Mark love his job or what? There's no thunderstorm over Louisville when that gust was measured.
Unbelievable.
Again, that's 71 miles an hour, 62 knots was the official measurement. Now, we talked a minute ago about some live video that we have. I want to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to need the information again about where that is when that gets pulled up. So this is going to be in Breckinridge County. You're looking live here. So this is live image. You're just kind of dipping in Hardin, Kentucky. Great identifier there. So let's describe what we're seeing here, folks. Obviously a big outbuilding here with roof damage. Let's just start there. That kind of metal sheeting on the top has been pulled back in a couple of spots. A couple of different directions. We won't say that that means that the wind was moving in different directions, but there it is. There's the metal sheeting missing from the roof. It's in the field right next to it. So some damage obviously here in Hardin, in Breckinridge County. Excellent work to our crews. Who's down there? Rod, who's this picture coming from right now? This is excellent work. We're so glad to have our teams out there and safe. Our teams were sheltered in place when the storms moved through so that they were in position to then bring you this footage afterwards. That's excellent work by our team. Here's a map of where that damage is coming in from to give you some perspective. Louisville is the bullseye in the center of that map where all the interstates come together. Harnage showing up in the dot, the red dot to the lower left. That's in Breckinridge County. And you're taking a live look here at some of the damage that was done there. Now, we had severe thunderstorm warnings in that area. We had strong wind gusts to 70 and even 80 miles an hour in those warnings. I actually think that was one of those 80 mile per hour boxes. So this damage makes complete sense. It's horrible to see. It's unfortunate to see. But this makes sense. And I think as we go through the next several hours, and folks start to head out, the storms clear out, we're going to start seeing more like this. So there you can see even more of that sheeting in the next field over.
You could hear, Hannah, even though there's not severe thunderstorms there, you can still hear the wind blowing. And that's an important thing to note here. I'm going to take you over quickly and show you these current wind gusts around our area.
Let me real quick.
Okay.
Because Jude mentioned this earlier. So that image right there is from Darby, and her photojournalist today is Zach Crabtree. So Jude had mentioned earlier they were out. We wanted to check in on them and make sure they were okay. Clearly they are, and we appreciate their hard work today.
Yeah, and then, part of organizing severe weather coverage. So yesterday when I was, Hannah and I and Rick as a group were sitting here in the afternoon, I went into the news meeting, tell them about what to expect today so that they can organize the plan. Again, I just want you guys to know that this whole thing that we put together when we go on air for a lot of hours is with a crew and a group. Let's go back to that if we could, guys. That was incredible seeing that. So we've got 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Elizabethtown, no thunderstorm. Louisville just gusted to 71. Louisville just gusted to 71. 54 Madisonville, 64 in Hopkinsville. This is that period where those gradient winds are going to be increasing. Jude, I know you were talking about this all morning long, that these are winds that have potential to approach what we sometimes refer to as hurricane force gusts. Now, of course, hurricanes are measured with sustained, so it's a little different, but we're seeing that realization here in Louisville. I think if you're waiting for thunderstorms is the only thing you need to be concerned about, this map says a lot of those are going by. Your concern is not over yet.
Exactly. That's one of the things that can really get you if you're not paying attention and up to date with the weather. You think that the winds are only going to be caused by thunderstorms, the heavy rain moving through. That is not the case. This is one of those freak storms that we're having right now. You have some information?
Well, so we're just getting pictures now on New Cut Road, Iroquois Park, and it looks like trees across road, and unfortunately it looks like a vehicle may have driven into that tree and the windshield's smashed. Honestly, I just want to really emphasize the importance of this. And so, you know, if you could, Jay, bring the camera just to me for a moment. I just really want to emphasize this, guys. The winds out there are still very strong. If you're thinking about, is this the time for me to go outside? Is this the time for my kids to be walking outside? I never will ever tell any school system what to do. That is not my job. But I just want to tell you, between me, you, and anybody listening, we need to be aware right now. If you're walking under a tree, those tree limbs can let go. If your tree limb lets go and you're under it, it's not safe. So we need to make wise decisions this afternoon. When we're driving, be aware of what's above us. Be aware of what's around us. If we're outside walking, be aware of what's above us. Be aware of what's around us. We're now in that period where these winds are going to be gusting over 70 miles an hour. Louisville just hit 71 without a thunderstorm. This is the gradient wind that I really wanted to tell you was going to be elite today on a storm that now that is the lowest pressure ever measured in Terre Haute, in Evansville, and in Paducah. And one could successfully argue that this is the most intense low pressures to move through those three cities. Louisville's lowest ever measured is in the 789-ish, 779, 979-ish range. If it was 7, we'd have a real problem. But 979 range. Louisville's probably not going to get to the 979, but we're probably going to be within a couple millibars of the lowest pressure ever measured. Now, from there, I want to take you over to Rick, who's looking at Storm View 3D. Rick, we're starting to see a sign within some of these thunderstorms from Campbellsburg through Newcastle, through Shelbyville, that they're acquiring rotation. Those little curly cues are miniature supercell signatures.
Yeah, and those supercells are literally stacked up on top of one another from Shelbyville, Eminence, Newcastle, into Campbellsburg. And a quick note, now that the gradient winds have been allowed to pick up with some sunshine poking its head out, the power outage is also going in the same direction, and that is up. LG&E in Jefferson County reporting over 8,000 people now without power. Meade County alone has over 1,100. In Clark County, 1,400 from Duke, about 1,000 in Crawford County, and just over the 500 threshold in Floyd County alone. So we are starting to see the power outages multiply, and that will only continue and not go away because the storms are gone. It doesn't mean you're safe to go outside. No worries at all, because we still have these strong winds in excess of 60 miles per hour that could snap some tree limbs. So make sure you know what you're walking under, and also be prepared and have a plan in case you happen to lose power at your house. Jude, are we seeing any sort of rotation within any of those supercells that we just kind of mentioned? Is there anything concerning?
And these are what we would refer to as miniature supercells. So these are the kind that you can acquire very quick rotation on, Jude. So you're really going to be eyeballing these every moment because you can get quick spin-ups out of these.
Yeah, the one right on 64 around Shelbyville moving over towards Waddy as it moves up towards Christiansburg. Doesn't even have lightning with it. It has strong wind, obviously. It has some tiny bits of rotation on that southern side, and right now that rotation would be lined up along I-64, but I wouldn't even necessarily worry about that right now. Just the fact that these storms are beginning to build a little bit farther down to the south, they're getting tails to them. That tells you there's plenty of inflow coming into the storm to help intensify these and actually kick up this line. And I would say it might even get down close to Taylorsville, where those winds start to pick up as it pulls out over towards Harrisonville. But in Shelbyville to Eminence, that's in southern Henry County, over around Pleasureville, and then it has moved through Campbellsburg, the heavy rain and the severe portion of that thunderstorm and rain shower. This will move up along I-71. It's in Carrollton, also up through Madison, gusty wind. Now the heavy rain is just moments away from letting up around Madison, but the wind threat will still linger. Again, looking at thunderstorms picking up in intensity from Shelbyville through all of Henry County right now, and then especially over to the east side, and then working to the east of Trimble County along I-71.
And you know, I will say this as we look at the information on what these areas are moving into, that the fuel is a little bit lower here, and the wind energy is becoming a little bit more favorable towards straight line wind versus tornado. But all that said, you know, we're definitely in a scenario where things are now starting to go downhill in Louisville. 71-mile-per-hour wind was measured. This was 10 minutes ago at the airport. It's a measured gust. A lot of people are messaging me now, even friends and family, that are saying the winds are going nuts. And honestly, it's accurate. That is a fair statement. So we've only got about another 20 minutes with these storms within our viewing area. I'm going to tell Jude that you need to go home at some point here, buddy.
Yeah, go take a nap.
You need to get some sleep.
Rick.
The storms will be moving away from our area, and so Jude, I think it's time for you to get some sleep. You've been awake for a really long time. Although,
And excellent.
and find him on social media. Let him know. Jude we refer to Jude sometimes as a workhorse. Jude's that guy that will message you in the middle of the night and say, or message you 10 o'clock, and he's going to be up at 4, and you're thinking, Jude, what are you still awake at 10 o'clock? He just wants to get that last run of the data, look at it before he goes to bed, or comment on WKU. Both of those are real stories. So, but watching these storms, again, pulling away. And we've got an image here of a utility pole that's down. Rod, can you give me some info on where?
Oh, man.
Whoa. Oh, so
that.
this is a power pole on top of a vehicle.
Please tell me no one was in there.
It looks like, just from the way people are viewing, that it doesn't appear somebody's in there. We would hope not. But you know, the unbelievable irony of the whole thing is we don't believe anybody was in the car as we're being told, but the irony of that is the rainbow in the background.
Look at the doors.
You know, guys, I just want to say this to you. Please understand that these winds are dangerous. We didn't play this up last night to try to get viewership. It's not what we do. I can tell you that Jude probably would have preferred to be home, taking a nap and letting Leo run around all crazy on him. But in reality here, the team's dedicated when we have active weather to stay on top of things. And this kind of damage is the kind of thing that's still real. I think that we look at this, Hannah, and we think to ourselves, okay, those thunderstorms are pulling away. Yeah, I got nothing to worry about.
No. Don't say that.
That's not real. This is 71 that was measured in Louisville within the last, 20 minutes or so. And we're getting these really strong gradient winds in Louisville. And the kids are going home from school right now. I know within the next hour, people will be thinking about how I'm going to be driving home. And I think it's important to think strategically. We talk about awareness, situational awareness. Know what's around you. Know what could fall on you, and just avoid those types of things. That's how we go through a scenario like this and keep ourselves safe, because we can keep ourselves safe even when we have strong winds like this, Hannah.
We sure can.
But we're still getting reports in of the really, really strong winds here. Taylor County just getting a new one.
Taylor County measured a gust of 68 miles an hour. For some perspective, on a normal day where we're doing severe coverage, 58 miles an hour, that's a severe thunderstorm. We just did that plus 10. Outside of a storm. Now, Rick, just a few minutes ago, was talking to you about individual cells that we're developing. He was talking about what's going on the southern edge of this line. There are still a couple of warnings. And remember, at this point, warnings are only for elite thunderstorms. Because of the high wind warning, we're not going to get vanilla kind of borderline severe thunderstorms today. It's got to be a step up to even get one of these warnings. So Rick is over at our green wall. Rick, talk us through what you're seeing here, the active warnings. Hold on one note before you do that, Rick.
Then Rick, before that, 31,000 without power in Louisville.
Quickly.
31,000 people. Did you hear that, Mark?
31,000 without power. And so you can see on the map there, specifically, Rick, I'll come to you here in a moment. I just want to make sure that we're focused here. So we've got a large power outage right now that is along, that's a Bardstown Road outside of the Gene Snyder. So this would be including the Glen Mary area, Seatonville, Thixton. It includes areas like Bullitt East near Mount Washington. We have the area that is near Spring Mill. So this one's going to be between the Waterson Expressway and the Gene Snyder. We have another area now centered around Okolona that's south of the airport. Another power outage right now that would include Fairdale High School, and then another power outage that is centered on Fairdale. This composes 31,000 without power in Louisville. Rick, this stamps what we just have been talking about. It's the show doesn't end with the thunderstorms leaving our area.
That's right. Just because we have the severe storms which go away does not mean the threat is over. 5 counties still under a severe thunderstorm warning, and in about 20 minutes, we are completely done with the severe thunderstorms, and then we really have to focus and pay attention to those gradient winds. In fact, we have more people without power now than we did with those severe storms rolling through. So that should tell you just how elite these winds will be. So let me give you a quick radar tour, show you what's going on so you know what's coming your way. This is the last batch of severe storms impacting areas like New Liberty down through Warsaw, leaving the Madison-Bedford area, and then behind that being replaced with some gusty showers, even some lightning strikes between those two areas from Deputy through Scottsburg, right along 65. You'll be driving through some windswept rainfall. We even have some light rain coming down in North Vernon, some rumbles of thunder out there as well. Heavy rainfall coming down in Pleasureville. This is going to track off to the east. So those of you who intend on traveling I-75 or know anyone who's about to travel I-75, give him a quick call, shoot him a text, let him know that that is not a good idea with a band of severe storms moving in that direction. So you can see the velocity have been turned on. And what this does, your eye should go to the bright colors because that tells you that the winds are ferocious in these tiny little pockets. So it's not like everyone's going to feel these winds, but still some gusts, 60 and perhaps over 70. We've already had a wind gust of 71 miles per hour at the airport, and that explains the vast number of power outages. Putting a track on this one, New Liberty around 8, in the Burlington area around 21, and Cincinnati in about a half hour. This line of showers and storms will be speeding in your direction, moving at 80 miles per hour. So even though we get the severe storms out of here, we still have to get through these gradient winds.
And that's one of the things that I want to focus on here. By the way, WDRB News will start at 4 as normal here, but we will continue to obviously be focused on these. Now, these wind gusts, I really want to emphasize something here. These are instantaneous. We get these wind gusts here constantly. These are not, oh, this occurred a little bit of, no, it just gusted to 68 miles an hour in Campbellsville. You're like, okay, it gusted to 68 miles an hour in Campbellsville. Let's look at that severe thunderstorm that's over. There's no thunderstorm in Campbellsville. Right. This is what I warned you of yesterday, is that these gradient winds were going to be elite. I used that on TV. I used that in our news meetings. I use it again. These winds are elite. We're getting numerous reports of trees down, power outages down. This is a threat to property, and this is a threat to life if you don't pay attention. Situational awareness is critical. You've got to know what's around you, and you've got to make decisions, because if those winds take down a tree, you don't want to be under the tree. If the winds take down a light pole, you don't want to be under the light pole. So which way are the winds blowing? You can see on the map here, the winds are blowing out of the southwest. So you look to the southwest and you know what's there. You're like, I'm not sure which is southwest. Then pull out your phone and there's a compass. But be situationally aware. The winds are going to be from the southwest. If things get laid down, they will get laid down from the southwest towards the northeast. WDRB News at 4 starts right now, and we're going to continue to update you on these strong winds that are moving across our area.
And thanks for joining us at 4. This is the Harnett Barn right here. The roof has been blown off this building. It has been a wild weather day as storms move through our area.
I want to show you another piece of video here from GE where there is a pole on a car, I'm told. This has been a wild weather day, folks, as strong storms move across our area. Our weather team has been on and off the air for several hours this afternoon. You may have been watching. I want to reset for those of us who are just tuning in for WDRB News at 4. Gilbert Corsi alongside Fallon Glick. Let's shoot back over to Mark Weinberg and the weather team that has been busy tracking the possibility of tornadoes this afternoon, severe weather, and a new word that I hadn't heard before, these gradient winds, elite winds, as you were just telling us.
70 miles per hour you were talking about, Mark.
Yeah, and you guys were in there in the meetings yesterday when we were kind of talking about this stuff. We really wanted to stamp the concerns that we have with what we have ongoing within our area here. I just want to let production know that I am going to go over to the 3D corner if we can do that here. So let's talk about where we stand right now. The flood watch for Louisville has been lifted for the Louisville area. We still have flash flood warnings here for Du Bois, Orange, Crawford, Harrison, Northern Meade, Northern Breckenridge, and Perry County. I really want to urge caution if you're in these areas. Remember, if you're in one of these locations, do not attempt to cross a flooded roadway under any circumstance. A high wind warning was expanded this afternoon. I noted this yesterday that it would probably need to go north of the river by one county. Weather Service made that adjustment. This through 1 a.m. is for wind gusts that could potentially get to 70 miles per hour. I will say it one more time. These are elite level winds potentially in our area, and we still have severe thunderstorm warnings ongoing here, specifically concerned north of Baghdad. So this would be the northern part of Shelby County, southern part of Henry County, but Carroll County also under the severe thunderstorm warning. Now remember, the Weather Service has noted they would not issue warnings on a situation like today unless we had winds that were over 60 miles an hour. So this should tell you where we stand on this. Notice there's not a lot behind this line. The area that we're watching the closest right now does look like it's acquired some rotation here. I'm watching just north of 64 along the Wadi-Paytona exit. Rick has got his eyes on that. We need to watch that very closely. Small hail core right now near Defoe. That straddles the Shelby and Henry County line, and we've got a severe thunderstorm right now that's moving into the eastern part of Carroll County. Be aware, all of these could produce 70 miles an hour winds, but I'm very, very much watching that storm that's north of Christiansburg. It is very clearly a suspect storm. The low pressure, so you know, broke a record in Terre Haute. Lowest pressure ever measured. Lowest pressure ever measured in Evansville. Lowest pressure ever measured in Paducah. I said it yesterday, I'll say it one more time. This is an elite level storm. Louisville, we're at 62. We've got winds that are 37, and Louisville just now measured a 63 mile an hour wind. Let me say that again. A 63, and Louisville peaked at 71. These are elite level straight line winds that are called gradient winds. So 59 mile an hour just measured in the Shelbyville area, 64 just measured in E-Town. Campbellsville just measured a 69 mile an hour wind gust. No thunderstorm, 69 mile an hour wind gusts. Be situationally aware, know what's around you, make decisions that keep you safe. These are very strong winds that will continue to be moving across our area. We've got a lot to cover with news as we're finding out information. Last report I had was 31,000 without power. I'm sure news is going to update you on that, but we will come back in moments and we'll continue to keep an eye on these storms. Those are some of the power outages. Gill and Fallon, we've got a lot.
That's right, Mark. These bubbles keep popping up in our viewing area, and you can see they are moving across the state. Tens of thousands of people are without power in the Louisville and surrounding area. Jefferson County, as Mark said, was at 31,000 customers without power. That's what all these bubbles right here are showing. And then in Meade County, about 1,000 customers without power. South Bullitt County, 2,000 people without power, and in Hardin County, 4,600 people without power. And a lot of people want to know, when is that power going to be restored? But if we look over here on this LG&E outage map, it says they are still assessing the conditions, and these numbers keep getting updated every 15 minutes. So as more people lose power, we will update you on that. But we want to talk to LG&E right now. Liz Pratt is a spokesperson for the company. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So knowing severe weather was coming through our area today, what did crews do to prepare for this event?
Sure, absolutely. Preparation was key. So with any storm event, we prepare year round. But as we started watching this storm system, we will communicate with fellow utilities. We'll monitor the system as it's moving in other parts of the country to see how it's affecting areas. In addition, here locally, we will mobilize resources. We will coordinate and alert our employees and our business partners. And so preparation is key. And what's really important as well is that we have about more than 40 operations center across our service territories. And why that's so important is as a storm system moves through the state across our LG&E and Kentucky Utilities service territories, it gives that ability for us to move crews and resources to the areas most impacted to begin the restoration process.
All right, so what type of damage are we seeing out there right now? Are we seeing power lines down on the road? Are we seeing snapped power poles? And what should the public know to do if they do see some damage to infrastructure?
Sure. So I will kind of tackle all those questions at one time. So what's key is, as you were reporting earlier just now, our outage map, it provides near real-time updates of the outages currently on our system. And what's important is it gives you that ability to zoom down into your local area. If you experience a power outage, please report that to us. You can, do so through our mobile app. You can text us through our outage texting. You can also report your outage through our automated phone system. So go back to your other question. Safety is key. That is what's most important. So, that is for our customers, our community, our crews working in the field. And so what we ask you to do is, if you see a downed wire, assume that's an energized power line and report that to us immediately by calling us at 502-589-1444. So, of course, the high winds we are watching closely. In this type of a storm system, the trees, tree limbs, and debris coming in contact with lines and our equipment is something that we are watching. So we have crews out responding, assessing damage, and beginning to make repairs. We are seeing scattered power outages across our service territories.
Liz,
the
biggest question that people from home want to know is, when are the lights going to come back on? Is there any kind of idea that you can tell us? Is it 4 hours? Is it 6 hours? Is it we can't get out until after the wind is safe?
So what you just said was key. Safety is a priority. So what we will continue to do, we will have crews responding. We are currently assessing damage. We also have equipment installed on our power lines that allow us to reroute power where we can around impacted areas to limit the number of customers affected. So we will first, restore service to critical customers. That's hospitals, fire departments, police departments. Then we will restore service to as many customers as we can as possible and repair damaged equipment. So this is a process. We are in the beginning stages of, as the storm continues to move through, we're in the beginning stages. So we ask for customers' patience. Please keep safety top of mind and report your power outages, and stay away from a down line if you see it, and assume it's a down power line.
All right, Liz Pratt with LG&E. Thank you so much for your time.
Want to give you a quick look of what's happening right now in southern Indiana, in Indiana as a whole. This is Duke Energy, and again, real-time power outages. Customers, about 12,000, almost 13,000 customers without power right now on the map. You can see a big cluster, about 5,000 nearly in the Clark County area, Clarksville, Jeffersonville area. Floyd County also has about 2,200 out right now. Crawford County has a big clip, about 2,200 out right now. And as I said, these numbers update almost in real time. 3,200 now in Floyd County is what I'm seeing from Duke Energy. All of these outages, at this point in time, the estimate to get the lights back on for customers around 10 o'clock tonight. But this story's kind of developing as we tell it, so you got to be flexible. It may not come back on by then.
Yeah, and staying in southern Indiana, our Grace Haba is there, and we've been talking about these high winds in the area, but we also want to talk about high water and flooding. So Grace, what have you been seeing out there, and can you show us some of the issues that are impacting southern Indiana right now in terms of weather?
Yeah, before I even can tell it to you, you probably can hear it just through my microphone. You just mentioned the winds. That is definitely the newest concern that we've seen here developed over the last 45 minutes or so. It's gotten so bad here in the Sellersburg area, which is where we are right now, that actually every single stoplight here in town is out. So that is something that police are currently working with. They have a number of crews out blocking different roadways, directing traffic. And here is another main issue that we have seen kind of all around southern Indiana. High waters that are blocking roadways. This is US 31. We're not far from the Clark Regional Airport, and it is causing a pretty big backup here. We've seen a lot of people coming down the road here. If we flip around, you'll see some cars over here turning around in a nearby shopping center. Police there again redirecting them. And a big concern is because right over here is a development. So we have a lot of people coming home from work not aware that this is flooded, and they're being turned around because, as you can see, there is no way they they can make it through that entrance. The good news for those folks is that there is another entrance for them to be able to get into that neighborhood there. But again, we have seen a lot of this high water, and earlier this morning we were in the Jeffersonville area and we did see Jeffersonville crews responding to a rescue there. The good news is the driver was able to make it out of the car, but their car got off the roadway, went into a ditch, and the water was so high it was up to the driver's window. So clearly a lot of issues being caused by high water down. We've also heard of several trees that have been down. Strong winds again here developing recently, causing a lot of issues. You can probably see it behind me, even on the water, just how strong those winds are. I'm not a particularly big person. You guys know how tall I am. I'm about 5'1", and I've almost fallen over a couple times. So definitely better to be inside if you can right now. Stay off those roadways. If you're driving on the roadways and you're near any semi trucks, when we were making it down here, we kind of had to keep our distance from some of them. So definitely some things to keep in mind. And if you do see a roadway like this, even if there is not a cop around, do not try to pass through it. Definitely safe to find another way to your destination. For now, reporting live with photojournalist Ian Cunningham in Southern Indiana, Grace Haba, WDRB News.
Ian, Grace, stay safe out there. We will get back to the major story of flooding in a
WDRB weather is sponsored by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance.
You know, when I say these winds are elite, they are. Of all of the times I've lived at my home, I have a ceiling fan that's on my outside deck, and it blew it off the ceiling. That's the first time that happened, and the grill is almost off the deck. Again, I corner that thing against kind of concrete so it can't get moved. I know that seems small, and I would agree there are people with way worse damage. But in my time, I've not ever seen that happen, and it literally, it's just, it speaks to me, at least for my property, that these winds are a different level. You can see wind advisory for the northern part of our area. High wind warning continues for the rest of the area until 1 a.m. What's the high wind warning for? It's for winds that are still going to potentially gust over 65. Some 70 pluses. I told you yesterday, I would be surprised if we didn't get one. Louisville hit 71, and we've had a number of locations that are really elite winds. Carroll County is the only county left within our area under the tornado watch, under a severe thunderstorm warning. We still have the flood watch in effect here for Lawrence, Jackson, Jennings County. Notice the flash flood warning counties have also been allowed to expire. And I want to show you where we have our storms right now. So Carroll County remains under a severe thunderstorm warning. Let me give you the all clear. The National Weather Service hasn't canceled it yet. I will tell you that the storms have left Carroll County and the severe risk is gone. But that doesn't mean that the gradient wind is gone. What? Gradient is your regular straight line winds here, and they are very strong. Outside in Louisville, we continue with the low clouds. We have just numerous damage reports. Our winds here at 71, just measured out of Campbellsville. Louisville on the hour noted 63, but off hour got to 71. Here is the low spinning to our west, and I want to answer the question, when did these winds get lighter? This is 9 p.m. showing winds pulling back. This is 1 a.m. showing winds are under 30 miles an hour. And this is 7 a.m. showing 10-mile-an-hour winds. Mike, we really need to be aware of these winds for the next several hours, but after about 10, they should start to be ramping down a lot. So I wanted to cover here how strong the winds have been across our area, and I also want to emphasize that I don't think we're done with the winds yet. We've compiled some of the strongest winds that we have had measured in the area. 71-mile-per-hour winds at Louisville, 65 in St. Matthews, 71 measured in Allendale, Kentucky, and 65 in Cecilia. These are all just a small cover of what has been an incredible wind event in our area. Carroll County remains under a flood advisory, flood watch to the north. We still have a high wind warning through 1 a.m., including Louisville, but I believe after about 10 we'll see these winds starting to relax, and you can see that we have a wind advisory for the far northern part of the area. Carroll County remains under a tornado watch, but I think that we could probably cancel that county at this point as all of the severe thunderstorms have now pulled away. So there are still some showers here in Louisville. I know that this is not necessarily the biggest story, but just I would not try to carry an umbrella. I would not try to carry an umbrella. That is not going to go well with what we have out there. So you can see some of the showers here from our camera. Let me show you. We're currently at 62. Instantaneous wind gusts just measured at 63 miles per hour in Louisville, and as we look around our area, we continue with very strong winds. 63 Shelbyville, 46 in Hardinsburg, 54 in Elizabethtown, and 48-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Campbellsville. We'll keep these winds up likely through about 10. We're going to talk about when we finally see a weather pattern shift, and we can stop talking about severe weather in 10 minutes.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Let's get out to Breckinridge County now. WDRB's Darby Bean is there. Darby, you spent part of the afternoon sheltering in place in the courthouse. When you emerged, there was quite a bit of damage around you.
Yes, Gilbert, so that's where we're at right now, is in Irvington. We were at the courthouse in Breckinridge County earlier. That's one of the areas where the shelters are in town. So we spent most of the day in the basement there. I hope you can hear me okay. It is windy. Mark was talking about those wind gusts. Mark, I want to know what the wind gusts are in Irvington, Kentucky right now, because it is windy. There are branches down, there are shingles from people's roof, and then across the street we'll have photojournalist Zach Crabtree turn the camera so you can see this tree down. And we're across the street from it also because there's some power lines down in this area, and we want to make sure we're staying far away from those. But the wind is wicked out here right now. And we're leaving town in Hardinsburg. There was a tobacco barn. We should have some video of that to be able to play for you all. That tobacco barn had lost most of its roof. We talked to the owner, and he said he expects for the rest of that roof to be gone by the end of the day with the way these winds are going.
So as soon as I saw her barn being tore up a little bit, I looked at mine down here, my tobacco barn, and it was pretty well, the roof, all the roof's pretty well damaged on and gone.
All right, so we'll continue to stay out here and let you all know what's going on right now. The big story is the wind. The Irvington police chief is just down the street. He's told us that he'll take us to some places that saw damage earlier today. We'll send it back to you all in the studio. For now, reporting live with photojournalist Zach Crabtree. Darby Bean, WDRB News.
Thank you, Darby. And we can see how windy it is out there. She was saying, Mark, let us know how strong the winds out there are. And Mark said it was 75-mile-per-hour wind. So definitely strong out there. Thank you for reporting, Darby. Well, in the past 40 minutes, thousands of more customers are without power as this storm moves through our area. Jefferson County, up to 42,000 customers without power. Bullitt County actually dropped to 37. We'll have to check back in with Bullitt County. Hardin County now jumped up to 5,000 customers without power. There is no estimated timeline for when power will be turned on for these areas, but once we get that information, we will be sure to bring that to you. Now let's jump back into southern Indiana. That's where our Grace Haba is. She has been following the winds there, and flooding also a big issue in southern Indiana. And Grace, you have an update for us. Apparently a road has reopened, but still a lot of water in that area.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Fallon. About 40 minutes or so, we were here with you on US 31. We're not far from the Clark Regional Airport, and when I was with you earlier, the road behind me was closed down. Since then, Sellersburg Police has reopened this stretch here. Again, about 40 minutes ago, this road was completely covered with water, but as we were talking about, these winds have picked up so much. You can see a car here coming out of the neighborhood. The winds have picked up so much that it's actually helped separate the rainwater that has fallen on both sides of the road. So that's what allowed police to actually reopen this section. So the new threat that we're kind of looking at actually kind of helped the other threat that developed earlier in the day. You do see some cars now going through that area, but some of them, like this vehicle, are going very fast and then hitting the brakes at the last moment, and that's what you do not want to see. On the edges of this roadway on the left, as you can see, you're not looking at a couple inches. If you drop your tire off the edge of the road, you're looking at several feet of water. Police estimate that there's 3 to 4 feet of water on the edge of this roadway. So if you are watching this and you are going to be taking US 31 or know anyone that uses this road to get home after their commute to work, please tell them to slow down. The speed limit is 35, and I'm telling you right now, we are definitely seeing people not abide by that. And it is a little concerning to see because, again, the sun is going down. It's going to get even harder to see that standing water, and it really needs to be something that people stay aware of. The wind here, though, again, has really picked up. It was actually so loud that just moments ago I turned to the photojournalist who's with me and I said, "Is that a plane?" And it wasn't. It was just the wind blowing through the trees through this area. So again, US 31 here near the airport is now back open, but you need to use caution because there is a lot of standing water, and it's not just limited to this area here in Sellersburg, but kind of all throughout southern Indiana. For now, reporting live with photojournalist Ian Cunningham, Grace Haba, WDRB News.
WDRB weather is sponsored by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance.
All right, thank you, Grace. This is a shot of Dixie Highway near Main Road. You can see a tree has toppled over, and it is across all of the streets, so no getting through at that point, Mark.
We've got some problems here tomorrow. I'm glad to say the weather's going to be quiet this weekend because a number of people, and I got to say, including me, I'm going to be doing some cleanup around the house. I had an outside ceiling fan blow over, and I feel that that's just kind of small in the scheme of what a lot of people are dealing with. Dangerous winds will continue tonight, so be aware. We're not done with the strong winds just yet. But I think that we're going to quiet down this weekend, and if you have some property cleanup to do, that's some good news there. Here's some of the peak winds that we have officially confirmed. 75 in Hardinsburg. One could argue that that is a hurricane force wind gust. 71 mile an hour in Louisville, 71 mile an hour in Allendale, Kentucky, 65 mile an hour winds in Cecilia, Kentucky. These are the latest of what we have. High wind warning continues through 1 a.m. This includes most of the area. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. This could include winds north of 70 miles an hour. Once we breach 7, I think that we would start to release the worst of it. But I think we still have maybe an hour or two where we could see the worst of the wind still. And a wind advisory continues for the northern part of the area. We also have the flood watch in effect for the far northern part of our area. And you have an aerial flood advisory. Now we're going to start to see river flood warnings coming out. And I thought that this was an important thing to note. The East Fork of the White at Seymour forecast to crest on Monday at 1 p.m. at 16 feet. That is in the upper side of minor flood stage. These will, of course, be updated in the coming days. I've asked the Weather Service out of Cincinnati if they will release Carroll County from the tornado watch. We'll see what they decide on, but in my opinion, that risk is waning. It just is, and I think that for our area, the tornado threat has indeed left our area. So we still have some showers out there for Louisville, which all things considered feels minor. However, there are still strong winds, and you can't carry an umbrella. Now, I want to tell you something. This is a crazy one. Louisville's pressure dropped to 977.5 millibars today. Who cares? The reason that you should care is this is the lowest pressure ever measured in Louisville. One could successfully argue that this storm then is the most intense storm to hit Louisville. Low pressure equates to storm intensity. If this storm had occurred in mid-April, this would have been an elite, high-level, catastrophic tornado event on the level of 1974. That's what we were talking about in the intensity of the storm. I'm glad to say that we didn't have those kind of high 70 temperatures, but 69 was obviously enough to cause some serious problems. Louisville right now sitting at a temperature of 62. 63 mile per hour wind gusts out of Louisville. And you can see the kind of damage here. This is Highway 44 in Shepherdsville from Tiffany Hazel. It's not like in the street, it's covering every ounce of the street. Still 62 mile an hour wind gusts in Evansville. 41 from Litchfield, 49 for you in Hardinsburg, 54 just measured moments ago in E-Town, 50 in Shelbyville. And you're like, well, why are they weaker in Mitchell and Seymour? They're under the low. It's like the eye of a hurricane. It's a similar scenario. And you can see the eye of this storm where the winds are lighter. Notice on both sides, they are stronger. Louisville gusted to 63 on the hour, off the hour hit 71. the temperatures are definitely starting to cool, and this is going to be a part of my discussion in the longer range. Yes, we're going to get cooler. We're going to turn more quiet as this ultra intense low goes by, but look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. The pattern is shifting, my friend, and I can tell you my team is glad to say this. The severe weather threat is going to be dropping off the chart for a while. After we breach 10, the wind gust potential goes way down, and by tomorrow, if you have any outdoor plans, we'll turn mostly sunny. I have some outdoor plans that includes cleaning up, and I know a lot of people will. Think about your neighbors, help them. If they have any damage in their property, offer your help. That's the heart of who we are as a community. You can see by Sunday a few high clouds out there, and the weather is definitely going to turn more quiet as we look towards the weekend. So tonight we'll drop back to a low temperature, coming in at around 37 degrees. Our showers will come to an end. West winds 15 to 30, but the gusts can still get over 60 miles an hour for the next 2 hours. 58 degrees as the clouds decrease tomorrow. The extended shows a quiet weekend. And Mike, you can see the cold weather pattern starting on Wednesday, lasting Thursday, Friday. I hope you don't have to see me cutting in for a while, my friend.
Gave me a shiver just looking at those temps. All right, let's take a look as we're heading out. We get a little bit of a break because the school system